The Force connects all living things across the galaxy, binding them in an invisible web of energy and fate. But some forces require no midi-chlorians, no ancient mysticism, no connection to the cosmic balance between light and dark. Some forces are born from love, loss, and the terrible simplicity of human will. The Empire was about to learn this lesson written in blood and blaster fire. The dimensional rift opened. Without warning in the lower industrial district of Nar Shadaa, the smuggler's moon, reality tore like fabric, spilling a man and a small beagle into an alley filled with the acrid smell of fuel exhaust and alien sweat. John Wick hit the Duracrete hard, instincts rolling him into a defensive crouch before his mind fully processed the impossible cityscape towering above him. His hand reached for the Glock at his hip, still there, while his other hand found soft fur and a reassuring heartbeat. The dog was alive. That was all that mattered. John's eyes cataloged everything with the cold efficiency of a man who'd survived decades in the world's most dangerous profession. The architecture was wrong, too vertical, too alien. The people passing the alley entrance walked on two legs, but many weren't human. Overhead, vehicles that shouldn't exist streaked between buildings that scraped a polluted sky. And the weapons. The pedestrians carried sleek energy weapons on their hips, glowing faintly in the perpetual twilight of the industrial sector. He'd been in Tokyo, tracking a high-table enforcer through an experimental technology expo. There'd been a prototype portal device, a firefight, blood on polished floors. And then, nothing. Just the sensation of being pulled through something vast and cold. Holding tight to the dog because letting go meant losing the last piece of Helen he had left. "Easy, boy," John whispered, running his hand along the beagle's back. The dog whimpered, pressing against his leg. They were somewhere impossible, but they were together. John had faced impossible before. He stood slowly, 6 feet of lean muscle and controlled violence wrapped in a black suit that was now torn at the shoulder. The Continental's rules didn't apply here, wherever here was. But John's rules did. Survive. Adapt. Protect what matters. A group of white-armored soldiers marched past the alley entrance. John's tactical mind registered every detail. Identical armor, rigid formation, blaster rifles held at ready positions, helmet design that would restrict peripheral vision. Military. Occupying force. Judging by the way civilians stepped aside without being asked, the soldiers' armor bore a symbol John didn't recognize. A hexagonal emblem that radiated authority and menace. Stormtroopers. The word drifted from a nearby conversation in a language John somehow understood, as if the same force that brought him here had rewired his linguistic centers. He needed information, resources, and time to think. The alley led deeper into the industrial sector, away from the patrol. John memorized the route ahead. 3 turns, 2 ladders to upper platforms. Sightlines that favored someone who knew how to disappear. Old habits from a life he'd tried to leave behind, flooding back with uncomfortable ease. They moved through the shadows like ghosts, man and dog, while the impossible city hummed around them. John found a maintenance alcove 3 levels up, shielded from the main thoroughfare by ducting and ventilation systems. The dog curled up on his jacket while John kept watch, mind working through scenarios. First, this wasn't Earth. The technology, the aliens, the architecture, this was somewhere else entirely. Another planet, another dimension, something. Second, those soldiers represented organized military force, occupation troops, which meant there was something to occupy, someone to oppress. Third, where there was oppression, there was resistance. And where there was resistance, there was an underground. John Wick knew undergrounds. He waited until the twin suns set. Twin suns. Because apparently one wasn't enough in this place, and the district shifted from industrial clamor to seedy nightlife. Neon signs and alien script flickered to life, advertising pleasures and vices. John recognized across any language barrier. He descended with the dog at his heel, moving toward the sounds of music and commerce that meant criminal enterprise. The cantina was exactly what he expected: dim lighting, suspicious patrons, and the universal atmosphere of people conducting business that governments didn't approve of. John walked to the bar with the confidence of a man who'd entered 1,000 such establishments. The bartender, something reptilian with yellow eyes, looked him over with the practiced assessment of someone who'd seen every type of dangerous walk through his door. Water, John said simply. For both of us. The bartender's scaled lip curled in what might have been amusement. He poured something clear into 2 containers, sliding them across the bar. John tasted it first, not quite water, but close enough, before setting the second container down for the dog. You're not from around here, the bartender observed in that same language. John shouldn't understand, but did. That suit. Those weapons at your hip. Chemical propellant projectile launchers, unless I miss my guess. Haven't seen those in decades, not since the Clone Wars. Just passing through, John replied, watching the room in the bar's mirror. 3 Rhodians at a corner table, hands near their weapons. A human in the back booth flanked by Gamorrean guards. A Twi'lek woman dealing cards to a table of spacers. Everyone armed, everyone calculating angles. Through? On Nar Shadaa. The bartender laughed, a wet rasping sound. Nobody passes through the smuggler's moon. You run to it. You hide in it, or you die in it. Sometimes all 3. Then I'm hiding. Smart. Though hiding works better when you don't walk around with an animal that Empire patrols might notice. Stormtroopers love randomly checking creatures for diseases, contraband, tracking devices, anything that lets them flex authority. John's hand stilled on his glass. They check animals. When they're bored. When they're mean. When they feel like reminding everyone. Who's in charge? The bartender's eyes narrowed. You want my advice? Find a ship, get off Moon before they notice you. Whatever you're running from. Can't be worse than what the Empire does to people who don't fit their neat little human-centric order. But John was no longer listening. The bartender's words echoed in a space beyond rational thought, touching something primal and terrible. Stormtroopers. Check animals. His hand dropped to where the dog lay at his feet, feeling the soft breathing, the trust that this small creature placed in the only family it had left. Where do these stormtroopers patrol? John's voice was quiet, the kind of quiet that had made high-table enforcers nervous. The bartender recognized the tone. He'd heard it before, usually right before his cantina became a crime scene. Everywhere. Imperial checkpoint, 3 blocks north. Garrison headquarters in the upper district. Listen, friend. I'm not your friend. John placed several gold coins on the bar. Continental currency that probably meant nothing here, but looked valuable. I need lodging. Somewhere they won't look. Somewhere with a back exit. The bartender stared at the coins, then at John's face, reading the story written there in scar tissue and dead eyes. 3rd floor, room 12. Back stairs lead to the maintenance tunnels. But I'm telling you, whatever you're thinking of doing, don't. I've seen plenty of tough guys come through here, thinking they can take on the Empire. The lucky ones die quick. John collected his dog and headed for the stairs. Behind him, the bartender muttered something. That sounded like a prayer in a language that predated the Empire. He'd seen that look before, in the eyes of men who'd already decided to walk into fire. The room was small, dirty, and defensible. 1 entrance. Window overlooking an alley. Thin walls that would let John hear approaching trouble. He set the dog on the stained mattress and began field stripping, his weapons by the light of the city outside. The Glock 34, the backup .380, the knife. All familiar, all reliable, all useless if the bartender was right about blasters being the standard. But John Wick had won fights with less, had killed with pencils, books, and broken rage when the situation demanded it. The weapons didn't matter. The will did. The dog settled into sleep, finally relaxed after the chaos of dimensional transfer and strange new worlds. John watched the small chest rise and fall, remembering Helen's hands placing the puppy in his arms. Her voice weak but certain. John, you need something to love, something to bring you back. This dog was that something. The last gift. The last piece of her. And somewhere out there in this impossible city, soldiers who answered to an empire John didn't understand were conducting random checks, flexing authority, making creatures and people disappear into detention centers, and worse. John's hand closed around the Glock's grip, the weight familiar and cold. He'd retired once, walked away from the blood and the body count, from the legend of Baba Yaga that made hardened killers whisper in terror. He'd found peace in Helen's smile, in a life that meant something beyond the next contract. But retirement, it seemed, didn't care what galaxy you ran to, and the men who'd taken everything from him before, the men who'd killed his wife through disease, who'd beaten him and stolen his car and murdered his dog, who'd dragged him back into the darkness. They all had one thing in common. They'd never imagined the consequences. These stormtroopers wouldn't either. In the neon-soaked darkness of Nar Shadaa, John Wick began to plan. The Empire had millions of soldiers, billions of citizens, resources that spanned star systems. They had technology beyond Earth's wildest dreams, weapons that could destroy planets, and a military machine that had crushed 1,000 rebellions. But they'd never faced a man who had nothing left to lose, except the last gift from his dead wife. And John Wick would burn their entire empire to ash before he let them take that away. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. The Stormtrooper patrol passed beneath his window at 0300 hours, regular as clockwork. John watched them, counting steps, measuring distances, calculating trajectories. In the corner, his dog slept peacefully, unaware that his existence had just declared war on the most powerful military force in galactic history. John checked his weapons one final time. They'd learned soon enough. Morning came to Nar Shadaa not with sunlight, but with the shift change in industrial sectors and the electronic wail of traffic control alerts. John had been awake for all of it, watching patrol patterns from his window, learning the rhythm of occupation. Every military force had patterns. Patterns meant predictability. Predictability meant vulnerability. The dog woke hungry, nosing at John's hand with the patient insistence of a creature who trusted his human to solve any problem. Food was the first necessity. Intel was the second. Both required John to venture deeper into a galaxy he didn't understand. He descended the back stairs into the cantina's morning crowd. Different faces. Same desperate energy. The bartender from last night was gone, replaced by a heavy-set human woman with cybernetic implants along her jaw who barely glanced at John as he approached. Rations, John said. For me and the dog. And information. She slid a plate of something gray and gelatinous across the bar, followed by a bowl of chunks that the dog immediately began eating. Information costs more than food. John placed another gold coin down. Continental markers had bought him answers in Prague, Tokyo, and Casablanca. Currency was currency, and gold was gold, regardless of the galaxy. The woman palmed the coin, testing its weight. Asked, the Empire, how long have they controlled this moon? Directly? 5 years. But the Hutts run most of the real business here. Empire takes their cut, looks the other way on the smuggling. And we all pretend the stormtroopers are really in charge. She refilled his cup with CAF, bitter, scalding, and exactly what John needed. Why? The stormtroopers. They have authority to detain anyone, search property. They have authority to do whatever they want. That's what Empire means. Her cybernetic jaw clicked as she spoke. Imperial Security Bureau runs the checkpoints. They're looking for rebels. Mostly dissidents. Anyone stupid enough to speak against the Emperor. But yeah, they'll harass locals just to remind everyone who holds the blasters. John absorbed this, mind filing it alongside everything else. A bureaucratic empire, militarized occupation. Local criminal elements maintaining parallel power. Not unlike Russian Bratva territories or the high-table sphere of influence. The players changed, but the game stayed the same. Someone wants to avoid Imperial attention. Where do they go? The woman studied him with eyes that had seen too much and survived anyway. Lower levels. The Hutts keep those areas Imperial-free by arrangement. Or you get off moon entirely. Find a ship heading outer rim. Somewhere the Empire's spread too thin to care. She paused. But you're not looking to avoid them, are you? John said nothing, which was answer enough. There's a bounty hunter cantina 6 levels down. You want work? You want weapons? You want to understand how things operate in this galaxy. That's where you start. But understand something, friend. Whatever tough guy reputation you had wherever you came from, it means nothing here. The Empire disappeared entire planets that defied them. They turned Alderaan to asteroid dust. So whatever vendetta you're nursing, let it go before it gets you and that dog vaporized. Alderaan, John repeated. The word felt heavy, like it carried weight beyond mere planetary designation. Peaceful world. No weapons, no military. Just billions of people who supported the rebellion politically. The Woman's voice dropped. Death Star came. Grand Moff Tarkin gave the order. And in 5 seconds, every man, woman, and child on that planet ceased to exist. That's the Empire. That's what you're thinking about fighting. John stood, leaving another coin on the bar. Directions to the bounty hunter cantina. She gave them, shaking her head. You really are crazy. Most people hear about Alderaan and decide the Empire's too big to fight. You hear about it and want it anyway. They killed my dog, John said quietly. It wasn't true yet, but it would be. He'd seen it in the patrol patterns, in the casual cruelty of soldiers who'd never been held accountable. The stormtroopers didn't know it yet, but they were already dead. The galaxy just hadn't caught up to that reality. The woman's expression shifted, something between pity and recognition. Then you're already gone. Dead man walking. I've seen it before. People who cross the line where survival stops mattering. Usually the Empire kills them within a week. Usually, John agreed. Then he collected his dog and disappeared into the crowd. The lower levels of Nar Shadaa were older, darker, and infinitely more dangerous. 6 levels down meant descending. Through layers of urban decay where the artificial lighting flickered and failed, where the air recyclers coughed toxic fumes, and where the only law came from whoever held the biggest weapon. John moved through it like smoke, the dog close at his heel. People saw them coming and decided to look. Elsewhere, some instinct, beyond language, warning them that the man in the torn black suit wasn't prey. The few who didn't get the message found themselves facing eyes that had seen the other side of death and weren't impressed by posturing. The bounty hunter cantina had no sign, no advertisement, just a reinforced door with a Wick guard who looked John over and jerked his head toward the entrance. Inside, the air was thick with a dozen different types of smoke and the tension of armed professionals sizing each other up. The bar stretched along one wall. Behind it, a Devaronian whose horns were filed down to stubs. The clientele ranged from humanoid to things John didn't have names for, all wearing variations of armor and weapons that looked designed for efficiency over aesthetics. Combat professionals, like John, but local. He took a stool at the bar's end, positioning himself where he could watch the room. The dog sat at his feet, drawing curious glances from hunters who probably wondered what kind of fool brought an animal into a place like this. First time in a hunter cantina? The Devaronian's voice was rough, amused. First time in this galaxy, John answered honestly. No point lying when everyone could already tell he didn't belong. Explains the antique weapons. Chemical cartridge firearms. You know those haven't been standard. Military issue for 3 decades? Even criminals use blasters now. Easier to maintain, more shots, less weight. These work fine. Sure. Until you run out of ammunition. Then you're throwing rocks. The Devaronian poured something amber into a glass. You looking for work or trying to hire? Learning the business. That got attention. Several hunters turned, evaluating John with the cold assessment of predators determining if he was competitor or prey. A Trandoshan at the far end hissed. Something that John's newfound linguistic understanding translated as fresh. Meat thinks he's a hunter. You registered with the guild? The Devaronian asked. No. Then you're not a bounty hunter. You're just someone with weapons in a bar, full of people who kill for a living. The bartender leaned forward. Here's how it works. The Bounty Hunters Guild sanctions contracts. Imperial, Hut, corporate, private, doesn't matter. You take guild contracts, you follow guild rules, you get guild protection. You freelance without registration. You're fair game for anyone who wants your gear. John processed this. Another organization with rules, territories, and hierarchies. How do I register? Bring proof you can do the work. A target, a confirmed bounty collection. Something that shows you're not just some thug with a blaster. The Devaronian grinned, showing filed teeth. Course, if you can't handle the work, you end up dead. Natural selection keeps the guild's reputation strong. What's the smallest contract available? The bartender accessed a datapad, scrolling through listings. Petty stuff. Bail jumpers, small-time smugglers. Who shorted the huts? Nothing. Worth a real hunter's time. He paused, eyes narrowing. Wait, there's something weird. Imperial bounty, just posted this morning. Target, unknown human male, armed and dangerous, suspected rebel operative. Last seen Upper Industrial District. Reward, 5,000 credits. John's pulse remained steady, but his mind sharpened. Description? Vague. Male human. Approximately 2 meters tall, black clothing. Armed with primitive weapons. Accompanied by a small four-legged mammal of unknown species. The Deveronian looked up, realization dawning. That's you. Every hunter in the cantina was now paying attention. Hands drifted toward weapons. The Trandoshan stood, towering over his table. 5,000 credits, someone muttered. Easy money. John didn't move. His hand rested casually near his hip, fingers loose. The dog pressed against his leg, sensing the shift in atmosphere. In the Continental, this would have violated neutral ground protocols. Here, there were no protocols. Just predators and prey. You don't want to do this, John said quietly. The Trandoshan laughed, a reptilian hiss. Human thinks he can face guild hunters. This will be. John moved. The Glock cleared leather in a fraction of a second. Decades of muscle memory translating into motion faster than thought. 3 rounds punched through the Trandoshan's chest before the alien's brain. Registered movement. The species' redundant organs meant he didn't drop immediately, just staggered, confused, looking down at wounds that should have been made by plasma. John fired twice more. The Trandoshan crashed into a table and stopped moving. Silence held the cantina for 3 heartbeats. Then chaos erupted. A Rodian drew his blaster. John's bullet caught him in the throat before the weapon cleared its holster. A human mercenary brought up a disruptor rifle. John shot him through the hand, then the face when he screamed. A Duros tried flanking from the left. John's backup point, 380, appeared in his offhand, punching rounds into center mass until the blue-skinned alien dropped. The cantina's patrons were experienced killers, but experience meant nothing against speed and precision refined over decades. John moved between tables like a ghost. The Glock barking death in controlled pairs. A weak way with a vibroblade got close. John trapped the weapon arm, broke the elbow, and put 2 rounds through the skull at contact distance. 6 seconds. 7 bodies. The remaining hunters froze, hands still reaching for weapons they now understood they'd never draw in time. The man in the black suit stood amid the carnage, smoking pistol held in a 2-handed grip that spoke of endless practice. Eyes cold as vacuum. Anyone else? John asked the room. No one moved. John smoothly switched magazines, holstering the backup pistol while keeping the Glock trained on the crowd. The dog remained seated where John had left him, patient and trusting. The Deveronian bartender slowly raised his hands. Okay. Message received. You can handle yourself. The bounty, John said. Who posted it? Imperial Security Bureau. Standard procedure for unidentified armed individuals in occupied zones. The bartender's voice was careful, respectful. But if you just killed 7 guild hunters in under 10 seconds, that bounty's going to increase significantly. John lowered the weapon. His heart rate was already returning to normal, the combat fugue fading. This was what he'd been, what he'd always been beneath the veneer of retirement. The Baba Yaga, the man you sent to kill the boogeyman. I need blasters, John said. Ammunition for these. He gestured with the Glock. Won't last forever. I need armor. And I need to know where the Imperial Security Bureau operates on this moon. Why? The Deveronian seemed genuinely curious now, professional interest overriding fear. Because they're going to kill my dog if I don't kill them first. Understanding flickered across the bartender's face. Not agreement, not sympathy, just recognition of a fundamental truth. In a galaxy of complicated politics and galactic-scale conflicts, here was something simple, something any sentient being could understand. Revenge. There's a weapons dealer 3 levels up, the Deveronian said slowly. Mention my name, Corvo, and he'll deal fair. ISB headquarters is in the Imperial sector, Upper City. Checkpoints, patrols, the works. They run the detention centers, interrogation facilities, and security operations for this entire sector. He paused. You go after ISB, you're not fighting stormtroopers anymore. You're fighting trained intelligence. Operatives who know how to make people disappear. And when you kill enough of them, they'll bring in someone worse. Worse than ISB. Inquisitors. Dark side force users who hunt. Jedi survivors, and anyone else the Empire considers a high-value threat. You become enough of a problem. They'll send one for you. Corvo's filed teeth showed in something that wasn't. Quite a smile. No offense, but you're just a human with fast hands. Inquisitors move faster, hit harder, and can choke you to death without touching you. John had seen impossible things today: alien species, energy weapons, technology that defied Earth physics. He'd been pulled through dimensional space into a galaxy ruled by an empire that destroyed planets. Force-using assassins didn't seem that much stranger. "I'll deal with that when it happens," John said. He picked up a blaster pistol from one of the dead hunters, testing its weight and balance. Heavier than a Glock, different center of gravity. But the fundamental principles remained. Point. Pull trigger, target stops moving. Corvo watched him adapt to the weapon in real time, making minor adjustments to his grip. "You really are crazy. But you're skilled crazy, which is rarer." He accessed his datapad again. "Tell you what, I'm sending your biometric data to the guild. Unofficial provisional status. That'll keep most hunters off your back. Killing you stops being profitable if you're technically one of us. Won't help with the empire, but it's something." "Why help me?" "Because in 40 years tending this bar, I've seen hundreds of hunters come through here talking about how tough they are. You're the first one who proved it before speaking." Corvo gestured at the bodies. "And because anyone who can drop 7 armed professionals in 6 seconds deserves a fair chance at whatever suicide mission they're planning." John holstered both pistols, collected the dog, and headed for the exit. Behind him, the surviving hunters gave him space, recognition settling in. The Outer Rim had thousands of dangerous individuals: Mandalorians, Wookiee warriors, Trandoshan slavers, but none who moved quite like the man in the black suit. Outside, in the toxic twilight of Nar Shada's lower levels, John Wick checked his ammunition count and began walking toward the weapons dealer. The Empire had posted a bounty on him after less than 24 hours. Good. Let them know he was coming. The weapons dealer operated out of a reclaimed cargo container 3 levels up, the entrance guarded by a protocol droid whose photoreceptors tracked John's approach with mechanical precision. The droid's bronze plating was scarred with blaster burns, and one arm had been replaced with a military-grade model that held a heavy repeating blaster with disturbing steadiness. "Proprietor Vrel does not accept unscheduled visitors," the droid announced in a prim accent that clashed with the weapon it carried. "State your business or depart before I am forced to demonstrate my secondary programming." "Corvo sent me," John said. "I need equipment." The droid's photoreceptors flickered. "Corvo the Deveronian? From the Hunter Cantina?" "Yes." "One moment." The droid's head rotated slightly. Internal comm systems presumably relaying information. After 3 seconds, it stepped aside. "Proprietor Vrel will see you. Please keep your hands visible and your animal under control. The proprietor has motion-sensitive defense systems that do not discriminate between threats and pets." Inside, the cargo container had been transformed into an armory that would have impressed High Table's best suppliers. Blaster pistols lined one wall in ascending order of power and price. Rifles hung from maglocks on another. A third wall displayed armor components, chest plates, helmets, gauntlets, in various states of repair. The air smelled of ozone, lubricant, and the sharp tang of Tabana gas. Behind a reinforced counter sat a chadra fan, barely a meter tall, with large ears and a flat nose. His tiny hands moved with impressive speed across multiple datapads, while a visor over his eyes displayed scrolling information that John couldn't read. "Corvo says you killed 7 hunters in 6 seconds with primitive projectile weapons," Vrel said without looking up, his voice high-pitched but businesslike. "Either Corvo is exaggerating, which he never does, or you're an outlier-level combatant, which means you'll need quality equipment, which means you can afford quality prices." "What's the exchange rate?" John asked, producing another gold coin. Vrel finally looked up, ears twitching forward with interest. He produced a small scanning device, waving it over the coin. "Fascinating. Pure gold, Earth alloy composition if I'm reading this correctly. Pre-hyperspace era Earth, technically. You're not from this galaxy at all, are you?" John said nothing. "Doesn't matter. Gold is gold, valuable anywhere in the universe for industrial applications if nothing else." Vrel manipulated his datapad. "Current market rate. That coin is worth approximately 800 credits. You have more." John placed 5 more coins on the counter. 4,800 credits. Decent starting capital, Vrel hopped down from his stool, approaching the weapon's wall. What's your combat profile? Close quarters? Medium range? Are you planning to fight armored targets, unarmored, single opponents, or groups? All of it, John said. I need weapons that work at any range against any target. And I need them to work every time. Perfectionist. I respect that. Vrel pulled down a blaster pistol with a matte black finish and compact frame. DL-44 heavy blaster. Standard throughout the outer rim, reliable, powerful enough to punch through light armor. Can be modified for increased power output, though that reduces shots per gas cartridge. This is the weapon you want for close to medium work. John took it, feeling the weight and balance. Heavier than his Glock, but not uncomfortably so. The grip was textured, the trigger guard generous enough for gloved fingers. Show me how to load it. Vrel demonstrated, popping the gas cartridge and power cell with practiced ease. To ban a gas here, power pack here. Standard charge gives you 30 shots. Modified charge drops it to 20, but hits twice as hard. Most people keep it standard. Volume of fire matters more than single-shot power. John loaded and unloaded it 3 times, building muscle memory. The mechanics were simpler than Earth firearms. No spring tension. No complex feed mechanisms. Just gas, power, and a magnetic containment field that translated into plasma bolts. I'll take 2, John said. And ammunition. Cartridges, not ammunition. But yes. Vrel pulled down a second. DL-44 and several boxes of cartridges and power packs. For medium to long range, I recommend an E11 blaster rifle. Standard Stormtrooper issue. Which means parts are everywhere, and you can scavenge ammunition from dead Imperials. Assuming you plan to create dead Imperials. I do. Thought so. Vrel retrieved an E11. Its white plastoid housing pristine. This one's refurbished from a stormtrooper who no longer needed it. 100 shots per gas cylinder, 3 fire modes, single, burst, full auto. Accurate to 300 meters if you can compensate for bolt drop. Stormtroopers can't hit anything because their helmets restrict vision, but in the hands of someone competent. He gestured meaningfully. John took the rifle, shouldering it and sighting down the length of the cargo container. The weight distribution was forward heavy but manageable. The stock length would need adjustment, but that was a minor issue. I'll take it. And 12 gas cylinders. Ambitious. I like it. Vrel scurried back behind the counter, tallying costs. For armor, I'm going to be honest. You're not going to survive direct hits from Imperial weapons regardless of what you wear. Stormtrooper armor is designed to disperse blaster energy, but it makes you slow and restricts movement. For your combat style, I'd recommend light flex armor. Won't stop direct hits, but will protect against shrapnel, glancing shots, and environmental hazards. He produced a black bodysuit with armored panels woven throughout. Duraplast trauma plates over vital areas, flex weave everywhere else. You can move naturally, won't overheat. And it's not obviously armor at first glance. Useful if you're operating in urban environments where stormtroopers stop anyone in military gear. How much for everything? Vrel's ears twitched as he calculated. Both DL-44s, 20 gas cartridges, 40 power packs, the E11, 12 gas cylinders, the flex armor suit, a tactical harness for carrying it all, 4,200 credits. John placed all 6 coins on the counter. I'll throw in a holster and a knife, Vrel added, sweeping the coins into a secure drawer. Not because I'm generous, but because Corvo's word means something and he clearly sees potential in you. Also, I'm intensely curious about how long you'll survive. While Vrel assembled the equipment, John stripped off his torn suit jacket and began putting on the armor suit. It fit like a second skin, the flex weave adjusting to his frame. The trauma plate settled over his chest, back, and vital organs with satisfying weight. He'd worn body armor before, during contracts that required it. This was lighter, more advanced, but the psychology remained the same. Protection that let you take risks you'd otherwise avoid. The tactical harness came next, with attachment points for the blasters, gas cartridges, and power packs. The E11 maglock to his back. The knife, a vibroblade with a monomolecular edge, went into a boot sheath. John checked his reflection in a polished section of bulkhead. The man looking back was familiar, armed, armored, and ready for war. The suit might be alien technology, but the role was timeless. One more thing. Vrel said, producing a small device the size of a credit chip. Personal shield generator. Creates a defensive field that can absorb one, maybe two blaster hits before burning out. After that, it needs 12 hours to recharge. Think of it as a get-out-of-death-free card that works exactly once per day. How much? 600 credits. But you're out of gold. John considered this. A shield that could save his life once per day was worth more than currency. I'll owe you. No. You'll work for me. Vrel's eyes gleamed. I occasionally need someone to recover equipment from hostile locations. Stormtrooper weapon shipments that got lost in transit. Imperial armories that could benefit from inventory reduction. You do 3 jobs for me, we're even. Refuse, and you don't get the shield. It was the kind of arrangement John understood. Services rendered, debts honored, mutual benefit. Not unlike the Continental's marker system. Agreed. Vrel handed over the shield generator. Attach it to your harness. It activates automatically when it detects incoming energy weapons fire. Don't rely on it. It's backup, not primary defense. He paused. You're going after the ISB checkpoint where that bounty originated, aren't you? Eventually. Word of advice from someone who's supplied hunters for 20 years. The Empire doesn't care about individual casualties. You kill 5 stormtroopers, they send 10. Kill 20, they send 50. Kill 100, and they start wondering if you're worth the resources to eliminate properly. That's when they send ISB special units or Inquisitors. Vrel's ears flattened. What I'm saying is, there's no winning this. Only degrees of losing. I'm not trying to win, John said, checking the DL-44's action one more time. I'm trying to make them pay. Oh, revenge. Vrel nodded sagely. The most honest motivation. Just remember, revenge in this galaxy has a bad habit of attracting Force users. And Force users have a bad habit of making conventional weapons irrelevant. John had no idea what. Force users were beyond the bartender's mention of Inquisitors. Another variable to learn about, another threat to prepare for. But preparation had always been John's advantage. Study the enemy, learn their patterns, find the weakness everyone else missed. I'll keep that in mind, John said. He called the dog to heel and headed for the exit. Wait, Vrel called. That animal. You're really doing all this for a dog. John stopped, looking back at the small weapons dealer. My wife gave him to me before she died. He's all I have left of her. Vrel's ears drooped slightly. The Empire has a lot to answer for across this galaxy. Destroyed planets, murdered families, crushed cultures. But I've never heard of anyone going to war with them over a dog that isn't even dead yet. He will be, John said quietly. I saw it in their patrol patterns. The way they move through civilian areas. Checking people randomly, asserting authority. Eventually they'll choose us. They'll demand documentation we don't have. Or they'll decide a strange animal needs to be detained for inspection. And then he'll be gone. He met Vrel's eyes. I'm not waiting for eventually. The cargo container was silent for a moment. You're going to do it preemptively, Vrel said slowly. You're going to hit them first. Yes, that's. Vrel trailed off, then laughed, a high-pitched chittering sound. That's the most insane thing I've heard in 2 decades on Nar Shadaa. The Empire hasn't done anything to you yet, and you're already planning their funeral. They posted a bounty on me. That's something. Because you exist, and they don't know who you are. That's how Empire works. They categorize threats and eliminate them. But you're treating it like a personal insult. It is personal, John said. Everything about tyranny is personal. Every checkpoint that makes people show papers. Every random search that violates dignity. Every soldier who thinks his armor makes him untouchable. The DL-44 was heavy at his hip, comforting in its promise of reciprocal violence. They chose to be stormtroopers. They chose to enforce the Empire's will. That makes them complicit. Vrel studied him with new appreciation. You're not just crazy. You're ideologically crazy. That's much more dangerous. I'm not ideological. I'm practical. John adjusted the tactical harness, ensuring everything was balanced. I know how this ends. I've always known. But I'm going to make them work for it. He left the cargo container, stepping back into Nar Shada's artificial twilight with 60 pounds of weapons and armor that made him infinitely more dangerous. Then when he'd arrived, the dog trotted beside him, unaware that his human had just declared a one-man war against a galactic empire. 3 levels up, an Imperial checkpoint processed civilians, checking identification and authorization documents while stormtroopers stood guard with casual arrogance. They had no idea that in 6 hours, one of them would make a mistake that would cost his entire unit their lives. John found a vantage point across from the checkpoint, settling into the shadows where the city's surveillance systems couldn't reach. He watched the stormtroopers change shifts, noted which ones were alert and which ones were bored, memorized the checkpoint's layout and fields of fire. The dog curled up beside him, patient and trusting. John Wick checked his DL-44's charge one more time and began counting the hours until the Empire learned what happened when you threatened the last thing a dead man loved, counting the seconds until 8. Stormtroopers stopped being the Empire's soldiers and became John Wick's first lesson in galactic politics. The principle was simple, universal across every civilization that had ever existed. Actions have consequences. The Empire was about to learn what that meant. The Imperial checkpoint operated with mechanical efficiency. 2 stormtroopers at the entrance screening civilians. 2 more at the exit verification station. 4 on rotating patrol around the perimeter. An ISB officer, identifiable by his gray uniform and board. Cruelty oversaw operations from a raised platform equipped with sensor equipment and communication arrays. John had watched them for 6 hours, learning their patterns with the patience of a professional who understood that preparation meant survival. The stormtroopers changed shifts every 4 hours, sloppy transition periods where attention wavered. The ISB officer rotated every 8 hours, and the current one had 15 minutes left on his duty cycle. Perfect. The checkpoint sat at an intersection between the industrial district and residential sectors, bottlenecking traffic through a single controlled access point. Smart design for security. Terrible design for the security personnel when someone decided to kill them all. John moved through the shadows, approaching from the checkpoint's blind side, where sensor coverage overlapped and created a 3-meter gap. The dog remained hidden 2 levels up, secured in an alcove where civilians wouldn't disturb him. John had learned that lesson in Moscow. Never bring what you love into the kill zone. The E-11 hung across his back. Both DL-44s rested in quick-draw holsters. The vibroblade pressed cold against his ankle. And beneath it all, the flex armor that Vrel promised would keep him alive for 1, maybe 2 mistakes. He'd need 0 mistakes. The first stormtrooper died without knowing he was under attack. John emerged from the blind spot, vibroblade in hand, and drove it up through the armor gap beneath the helmet. The monomolecular edge-parted plastoid, flesh, and bone with equal ease. The stormtrooper's vocoder started to crackle a warning, but John's hand was already clamping over the speaker, muffling it to nothing. The body settled silently against the checkpoint wall. John took the stormtrooper's E-11, checked the charge, full cylinder, and moved to the next target. The patrol pattern brought a second soldier around the corner in 30 seconds. John counted it down, breathing steady, heart rate controlled. The stormtrooper rounded the corner, and John shot him twice in the chest. The E-11 coughing plasma in near-silent bursts at this range. The armor dispersed some energy, but not enough. The stormtrooper collapsed, armor smoking. Now the timer started. 15 seconds before the patrol check-in. 30 before someone noticed the missing soldiers. John moved. The third stormtrooper was scanning a Twi'lek's identification when the blaster bolt took him in the back of the helmet. The shot punched through at the weak point where helmet met neck seal. He dropped like a puppet with cut strings. Civilians screamed. The fourth stormtrooper at the entrance swung his rifle around, trying to acquire a target in the sudden chaos. John shot him through the visor. The E-11's bolt turning the trooper's faceplate into superheated slag and what lay behind it into vapor. 4 down. 5 to go. Code 7. Code 7. The ISB officer was shouting into his comm, taking cover behind the sensor platform. Checkpoint Delta under attack. Unknown hostile, multiple casualties. The remaining stormtroopers converged on John's last position. Blaster fire stitching through the air where he'd been 3 seconds ago. But John was moving, using civilian cover and checkpoint infrastructure, staying mobile. The stormtroopers had been trained to hold ground and suppress threats with volume of fire. John had been trained to move like smoke and kill like lightning. A stormtrooper cleared the corner too confidently. John's 44 was already aimed where the trooper's head would be. One shot. The helmet cracked, the body fell. 5 down. 5 down. Two stormtroopers moved together, covering each other by doctrine. Smart tactics, but doctrine presumed a conventional enemy. John wasn't conventional. He flanked wide, using the sensor platform's support struts for cover, and fired from an angle that gave him both targets in profile. 2 shots, 2 bodies. 7 down. The last stormtrooper and the ISB officer remained. The trooper had taken defensive position near the communication array, rifle aimed at every approach vector. The ISB officer crouched behind him, sidearm drawn but hands shaking. John could see it even at this distance. The officer had probably never been in actual combat, had relied on the stormtroopers to do the killing while he supervised from safety. That safety was gone now. Surrender. The ISB officer shouted, voice cracking. Imperial reinforcements are en route. You can't escape. John didn't respond. Conversation was time wasted, and time meant more stormtroopers arriving. He circled, patient, looking for the angle. The stormtrooper was well trained, covering his sectors, not panicking. But he was also alone, defending a fixed position against an enemy who'd just killed 7 of his comrades in 90 seconds. John saw it in his stance, the infinitesimal tension, the micro-adjustments that spoke of nerves eroding discipline. John threw the vibroblade. It wasn't a perfect throw. He'd only practiced knife throws for a few years, and the vibroblade's weight distribution was different from Earth weapons. But it was good enough. The blade spun through air and clanged off the stormtrooper's helmet, not penetrating but creating a moment of distraction. John fired the DL-44 3 times in that moment. One shot hit armor and dispersed. The second hit the rifle, melting the barrel. The third hit the gap between chest and shoulder plates. The stormtrooper went down. 8. The ISB officer was running now, abandoning his post, sprinting for the residential sector where he might disappear into crowds. John pursued at a measured pace, the DL-44 steady in his hand. The officer made it 20 meters before his nerve broke entirely and he turned, raising his pistol with both hands. Stay back. I'm ISB. Killing me is. John shot him through the heart. The officer collapsed against a vendor stall, gray uniform staining darker. His eyes were still open, still shocked that authority hadn't protected him. That rank hadn't made him untouchable. John stood over him. You posted a bounty on me. That made it personal. The officer's mouth worked. Who? Who are you? Someone who came here with a dog, John said quietly. Someone your stormtroopers would have detained, questioned, and likely killed. Someone you decided was a problem before I'd done anything wrong. We protect the Empire. The officer's breathing was shallow, rapid. No, you protect yourselves. The Empire is just the excuse you use. John holstered the DL-44. Around them, civilians were fleeing or hiding, wanting no part of what they'd just witnessed. Tyranny is always personal. Every checkpoint, every detention, every time you made someone afraid of soldiers who were supposed to serve them. That's all personal. The ISB officer died with confusion on his face, still not understanding how a single individual had just dismantled an Imperial checkpoint. John collected what he could: gas cartridges, power packs, the officer's security pass guard. Then he checked his own status. The flex armor had taken 2 glancing hits, the material scorched but intact. His shield generator hadn't activated, which meant he hadn't taken direct fire. Good. That resource remained available. In the distance, sirens wailed. Imperial reinforcements, exactly as the officer had promised. John had maybe 3 minutes before they arrived in force. He activated the checkpoint's communication array, accessing the Imperial network with the officer's security pass guard. The system was protected, but not well, designed to keep out casual hackers, not someone with military intelligence training and high-table information warfare experience. John uploaded a simple message to the Imperial Security Bureau's Nar Shadaa headquarters. 8 soldiers. 1 checkpoint. You started this. I'm finishing it. Come find me. He didn't sign it. The bodies would sign it for him. Then he melted back into the shadows, moving through the maintenance, tunnels and service corridors that honeycombed the moon's infrastructure. Behind him, the checkpoint was a charnel house. Plasma scoring the walls, bodies cooling in armor that hadn't protected them. The Empire would analyze what happened. They'd review sensor footage, reconstruct the attack, evaluate the threat. They'd increase security, expand patrols, put bounties on his head that would attract every hunter in the sector. Good. Let them come. John emerged 3 levels down, back in the criminal districts where Imperial presence was, negotiated rather than enforced. The dog was exactly where he'd left him, curled in the alcove, safe and waiting. The beagle's tail wagged when John appeared, simple joy at reunification. John knelt, running his hand along the soft fur. We're okay. We're going to be okay. The dog licked his hand, trusting completely. John wished he could believe his own words. The cantina where John had killed the hunters was surprisingly busy when he returned. Word traveled fast in the Underworld. Hunters respected results. And John's results had been spectacular. Bodies had been removed, plasma scoring cleaned from the walls. But the atmosphere remained charged with the memory of violence. Corvo the Deveronian nodded as John entered. Heard you hit an Imperial checkpoint. 8 stormtroopers and an ISB officer. That's either very brave or very stupid. Necessary, John said, taking his previous seat. The dog settled at his feet. What's the response? Predictable. They've locked down the upper industrial district, quadrupled patrols in the Imperial sectors, and issued a revised bounty on you. Corvo poured something. That looked like whiskey, but smelled like antifreeze. 50,000 credits. Dead or alive, though they strongly preferred dead. John had expected this. Escalation was inevitable. Who's hunting me? Everyone with a blaster and bad judgment. But the serious players are waiting to see what the Empire does next. 50,000 is good money, but not worth dying. For if you're as dangerous as advertised, Corvo slid the glass toward John. Question is, what do you do now? You've kicked the ban the nest. Imperial reinforcements will flood the moon within 48 hours. I keep going. To what end? You can't kill the Empire. There are trillions of them in one of you. I don't need to kill the Empire, John said. Just the parts of it that threaten what I care about. Corvo studied him with ancient, cynical eyes. You're serious? You really think you can maintain a one-man war against Imperial occupation? I've done it before. Different enemy, same principles. This isn't some crime syndicate you can decapitate by killing the boss. The Empire is a hydra. Cut off 1 head, and 2 more grow back. Emperor Palpatine sits on Coruscant with 1 million Star Destroyers and unlimited clone soldiers. You're a rounding error in his military calculations. Then I'll be a loud rounding error. John finished the drink. The burn familiar despite the alien chemistry. I'm not trying to overthrow the Empire. I'm trying to make this moon too expensive to occupy casually. Make them commit resources, pull in reinforcements, disrupt their operations. Eventually, they'll decide Nar Shadaa isn't worth the trouble. Corvo laughed, but there was no humor in it. You're thinking like a guerrilla, like the rebellion. I'm thinking like someone who has nothing left to lose except a dog. The rebellion has that motto too, nothing left to lose. They've been fighting the Empire for years. Won some battles, lost most others, and all they've accomplished is getting brave people killed. Corvo leaned forward. But they're organized. They have resources, safe houses, intelligence networks. You're one man with stolen blasters. Then I'll build what I need. A voice spoke from behind John. Female and controlled. Maybe you don't have to build it alone. John turned, hand drifting toward his holster. A woman stood 3 meters back, positioned where she could move either direction, hands visible but clearly comfortable with violence. Human, late 30s. Wearing practical clothing with the wear patterns of someone who lived rough. Her eyes evaluated John with the calculating precision of a fellow professional. Who are you? John asked. Mara Vex. Rebellion Intelligence. She raised her hand slightly, showing she wasn't armed. I saw what you did at the checkpoint. Very impressive. Very loud. Very much the kind of thing that makes the Empire nervous. I'm not interested in your rebellion. I know. You're interested in revenge, in protecting your dog, in making the Empire pay personal costs for their impersonal tyranny. Mara smiled slightly. But here's the thing. Your goals and our goals align. You want to hurt the Empire on Nar Shadaa. We want to hurt the Empire everywhere. We can help each other. I work alone. Clearly. 1 man, 8 stormtroopers, 90 seconds. I believe you work alone. She took a careful step closer. But working alone means limited intelligence, no backup. And eventually, probably soon, getting overwhelmed by sheer numbers. The rebellion can provide intelligence on Imperial movements, safe houses when you need them, medical support when you're injured. All we ask in return is that you hit targets we designate, targets that hurt the Empire strategically, not just tactically. John considered this. In his previous life, he'd worked contracts for various organizations, the Tarasov family, the Camorra, the High Table itself, always carefully chosen, always on his terms. But he'd never worked entirely alone. Winston had provided intelligence. The Continental had offered sanctuary. Sharon had watched his back. Maybe Mara was right. Maybe lone wolves eventually got surrounded by packs. What targets, he asked. Supply convoys, communication relays, ISB detention facilities. Where they're holding political prisoners. Mara's eyes gleamed. And in return for your very specific skill set, we give you something you can't get anywhere else. Information on who ordered that bounty on you. Which ISB officer first flagged your presence? Who decided you were a threat? John's hand tightened on his glass. You have that information? We have informants everywhere, including inside ISB headquarters on this moon. Mara smiled. Revenge is personal. We understand that. So let's make your revenge count for something larger. Corvo watched this exchange with interest. You know, he said to John, most people who join the rebellion do it for ideology. Freedom, justice, democracy. You'd be the first person joining because the Empire inconvenienced your dog. The Empire inconvenienced billions of people, Mara said sharply. Destroyed entire planets. Murdered children. Turned the galaxy into a police state. If a man and his dog are what finally push someone to fight back, I'll take it. John looked down at the beagle sleeping peacefully at his feet. The dog had no idea that his existence had started a war. No idea that the man who fed him and protected him was now negotiating with rebels and planning to kill Imperial soldiers by the dozen. Helen would have hated this, would have begged him not to go back to the darkness, not to let revenge consume everything good left in him. But Helen was gone, and the Empire had made it clear that John's existence was a problem they intended to solve with detention, interrogation, and likely execution. They'd threatened the last piece of her he had left. That made the choice simple. I'll hit your targets, John said, but I choose how and when. I don't take orders. I take suggestions. Fair enough. Mara extended her hand. Welcome to the rebellion, John Wick. John didn't shake. I'm not joining your rebellion. I'm using your resources to kill people who need killing. There's a difference. For now, Mara said. But you'll find that the difference gets smaller every time you see what the Empire does to people who can't fight back. She was probably right. John had seen enough empires, criminal, corporate, political, to know how they operated. The strong preyed on the weak until someone decided that strength should serve justice instead of domination. But that was philosophy. John dealt in action. The ISB officer who posted my bounty, John said. I want a name and location. Captain Van Thrace. ISB headquarters, Upper City. Office, Sublevel 3. Mara produced a datapad, displaying a holographic image of a middle-aged human in an ISB uniform. He specializes in identifying potential rebel sympathizers through behavioral analysis. You appeared on his sensors as an unknown, armed individual, which automatically flagged you as suspicious. He posted the bounty without knowing anything about you except that you existed. John studied the image, memorizing the face. He's first. Good. We have 17 more targets after him. Mara smiled. The Empire is about to learn that threatening John Wick was the worst mistake they made this decade. In the corner, the dog slept peacefully, dreaming whatever dogs dream. Outside, the Empire mobilized forces to hunt a single man. And in the shadows of Nar Shada's Underworld, John Wick began planning how to kill Captain Van Thrace and every Imperial soldier between him and justice. The galaxy was about to discover what the High Table already knew. When you kill John Wick's dog, you don't just murder an animal. You awaken something that should have stayed buried. The rebellion safe house was 3 levels below the cantina, carved into Nar Shada's original infrastructure where Duracrete met bedrock and surveillance systems couldn't penetrate. Mara led John through a series of passages that required specific knowledge to navigate. False walls, sensor-baffled doors, routes that doubled back on themselves to confuse pursuit. Professional paranoia. John appreciated that. Inside, the safe house was compact but functional. Sleeping quarters for 6, a small armory, communication equipment, and a tactical planning table, displaying holographic maps of Nar Shadaa's Imperial installations. 3 other rebellion operatives looked up as John entered, hands drifting toward weapons before Mara waved them down. "This is our new asset," she announced. "The one who hit checkpoint Delta." A Zabrak male with facial tattoos grunted. "One man did that. I heard it was a commando team." "One man," Mara confirmed. "Which is why we're offering him support instead of letting the Empire turn him into a martyr or a liability," added a human woman cleaning a blaster rifle. 8 dead stormtroopers brings heat we don't need. Heat we can use, Mara corrected. The Empire is diverting resources to hunt him. That creates opportunities elsewhere. We hit supply convoys while they're focused on checkpoints. We extract prisoners while they're reinforcing detention facilities. His chaos becomes our advantage. John set the dog down, letting him explore the safe house under watchful eyes. The operative seemed uncertain about the animal, not hostile, just confused about why a combat operative traveled with a pet. "His name?" the Zabrak asked. John realized he'd never actually named the dog. Helen had given him the beagle as a gift after her diagnosis, something to fill the coming emptiness. But they'd never settled on a name before the cancer took her. He'd just called him boy or dog or nothing at all. "Daisy," John said suddenly, surprising himself. Helen had loved daisies. Simple flowers, she'd said. Honest flowers. The kind that grew anywhere if you gave them a chance. The dog's ears perked up at the sound, accepting the name with canine pragmatism. "Daisy," Mara repeated, something softening in her expression. "That's unexpectedly gentle for someone who just killed 8 Imperials." "My wife liked daisies," John said simply. Understanding flickered across the operatives' faces. A dead wife, a dog named for flowers, and a man willing to fight an empire. The mathematics of grief adding up to violence. The Zabrak nodded slowly. Thane. Demolitions and heavy weapons. The woman with the rifle is Kessa, sniper and overwatch. The Bodhan in the corner is Vri, slicing and intelligence. He paused. "We don't usually work with outsiders, but Mara says you're worth the risk." "I'm not asking you to trust me," John said. "I'm asking you to point me at Imperial targets and stay out of my way. Direct. I respect that." Thane pulled up a holographic display of ISB headquarters. "Your target, Captain Thrace, works here. 15 floors, 3 sublevels. Approximately 200 ISB personnel plus 50 stormtrooper guards. Security includes biometric scanners, automated turrets, ray shields, and direct communication to the local Star Destroyer for rapid response." John studied the layout, mind automatically categorizing entry points. Escape routes, kill zones. "How many civilians work there?" "Define civilians," Kessa said. "Everyone in that building serves the Empire, even the maintenance droids. Non-combatants, administrative staff, cleaning crews, anyone not carrying weapons." Kessa exchanged glances with Mara. "You care about collateral damage?" "I care about killing people who deserve it," John replied. "Soldiers made a choice. Administrators might have been conscripted, coerced, or just desperate for employment. I don't kill people for having bad jobs." "Principled," Thane observed. "That'll get you killed in this galaxy. It's kept me alive for 20 years in mine." Mara gestured at the hologram. "Most administrative staff clear out by 1900 hours. ISB agents and stormtroopers maintain overnight presence. If you hit the building at 2100 hours, you'll minimize civilian casualties while still having access to Thrace. He works late. Obsessive personality, probably trying to impress his superiors." "What's the rebellion's interest in this target?" John asked. "Thrace personally signed detention orders for 43 people on this moon in the past month. 17 haven't been seen since. The others are in ISB, holding cells awaiting transfer to Imperial labor camps." Mara's voice hardened. "He's not just a bureaucrat. He's a killer with a desk and authorization codes." "Then he dies," John said. "What's the plan?" Vri the Bodhan finally spoke, his voice raspy and accented. "I can slice into their security grid, create a cascade failure that blacks out sensor coverage for 8 minutes. But that's all you get, 8 minutes. Before their backup systems activate and they realize they're under attack. 8 minutes to infiltrate, locate Thrace, eliminate him, and extract. I only need 4, John said. Confident. Vria's fur rippled in what might have been amusement or skepticism. I like confidence. Keeps the species diverse by removing overconfident members from the gene pool. I've infiltrated secure facilities before. Federal Reserve, Continental Archives, Russian mob strongholds. John traced potential routes through the hologram. This is harder because of the technology gap, but the principles remain the same. Find the blind spots, move quickly, stay ahead of their response time. And if you're captured? Kessa asked. I won't be. That's not a plan. That's optimism. It's a statement of fact. John met her eyes. I don't get captured. I die fighting, or I complete the objective. Those are the only 2 outcomes. Thane laughed, a deep rumbling sound. I'm starting to like you. Wick, you're either the deadliest human I've met or the most delusional. Either way, it'll be entertaining to watch. Mara pulled up a secondary hologram showing the building's sublevel 3. Thrace's office is here, northeast corner. He has a personal security detail. 2 stormtroopers who stand outside his door. The corridor has 4 automated turrets with overlapping fields of fire. Getting to him means neutralizing all of it without triggering a facility-wide alert. John studied the turret placement, calculating angles and response times. The turrets are motion-activated. Heat and motion, Vri confirmed. But during the blackout, they default to standby mode. You'll have those 8 minutes where they're not actively tracking. What about Thrace's personal security? Standard stormtroopers. No special training beyond basic infantry. Protocols. Mara zoomed in on the office layout. But Thrace himself is armed and has panic button access. One press and the entire building locks down. Blast doors seal every corridor. And you're trapped inside with 200 hostile ISB agents. Then I don't let him press it. Again with the confidence, Kessam muttered. How many infiltration missions have you actually run? 47 successful. 3 failed, but I survived. John didn't elaborate on what failed meant. High-table contracts that had gone wrong. Targets who'd been better protected than intelligence suggested. Situations where he'd needed to extract under fire. This will be 48. Mara seemed to be evaluating him, weighing his competence against the mission's risks. We can provide overwatch from the building across the street. Kessa's rifle can take out exterior guards if you need an exit route. Thane can rig charges on nearby infrastructure to create a distraction. Vri handles the electronic warfare. But once you're inside, you're alone. I work better alone. Yes, we've noticed. Mara deactivated the hologram. You understand what happens if you're killed or captured. The Empire will torture you for information about rebellion operations. They'll use enhanced interrogation, truth serums. Even force-sensitive interrogators if they think you're valuable enough. John thought about the Continental's code of silence. The omerta that kept high-table secrets buried even under the worst torture. He'd been trained to resist interrogation, pain management, mental compartmentalization, psychological resilience. Whether those techniques worked against truth serums and force users was unknown. But John had broken before and survived it. If I'm captured, assume I'm compromised, he said. Burn this safe house, relocate your people, and don't attempt rescue. I'm not worth exposing your network. Noble, Thane said. But stupid. You're a valuable asset now. We'd at least try to recover you. Don't. John's voice carried finality. I've been a liability before. People died trying to save me. I won't let that happen again. The safe house fell quiet. In the corner, Daisy had found a water bowl and was drinking noisily, tail wagging, oblivious to the discussion of torture and sacrifice. Mara broke the silence. The mission is tomorrow night, 2,100 hours. Vri will initiate the blackout. You'll have 8 minutes. We'll maintain overwatch and extraction support. Any questions? 1, John said. After Thrace is dead, what's the Empire's response? More patrols? Martial law? Reprisals against civilians? Yes to all 3, Mara answered honestly. They'll crack down hard, probably arrest random suspects to demonstrate power, possibly execute some as examples. That's what Empire does. Respond to precision attacks with massive intimidation. Then we need a counter-narrative. John had learned this principle during his high-table years. When you killed someone important, you controlled how the story spread. We make sure people know why Thrace died. Broadcast his crimes, the detention orders, the disappeared civilians. Make him a symbol of Imperial abuse, not a martyr. Vria's ears perked forward. You want me to slice Imperial communication networks and broadcast evidence of Thrace's activities? Can you? It's risky. They'll trace the signal, hunt for the source, probably discover some of our safe relay points. Reconsidered. But it would be spectacular propaganda. ISB agent killed, his crimes exposed. The Empire forced to explain why they employed him. Do it, Mara decided. Thrace's death becomes a message. The Empire protects murderers, and someone is finally holding them accountable. It won't stop their crackdown, but it might inspire others to resist. Or it might inspire the Empire to send worse people, Kessa warned. Thrace is small time compared to some ISB directors. Kill him loudly enough, and they might replace him with someone truly dangerous. They're all dangerous, John said. The ones who give orders, the ones who follow them, the ones who look away. Everyone who props up the machine shares responsibility. Spoken like a true rebel, Thane grinned. Welcome to the righteous crusade. I'm not crusading. I'm killing one specific person who threatened my existence. If that happens to align with your goals, fine. But don't mistake necessity for ideology. Fair enough. Mara gestured to a corner with sleeping pallets. You can rest here until the mission. We'll wake you at 2,000 hours for final preparations. Try to sleep. You'll need it. John doubted he'd sleep. He rarely did anymore. Not since Helen. But he settled onto a pallet with Daisy curling against his side. The dog's warmth a reminder of what he was fighting for. Around him, the rebellion operatives went about their preparations with professional efficiency. Thane checked explosive charges. Kessa cleaned and calibrated her rifle. Vri muttered over computer terminals, fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. Mara reviewed tactical plans, making adjustments, anticipating Imperial responses. They were good, competent, experienced, committed to something larger than themselves. In another life, John might have respected that commitment, might have joined their cause genuinely instead of as convenient alignment. But John had tried belief once, tried loving something more than the next contract. And the universe had taken Helen, taken his chance at redemption, and dumped him in a galaxy where the pattern repeated, powerful, people hurting innocents, systems crushing individuals, and no one with the will or skill to make it stop. So he'd make it stop, one ISB captain at a time. Tomorrow night, Captain Van Thrace would die in his office, surrounded by evidence of his crimes. And the Empire would learn that even their secret police weren't untouchable. And if the Empire responded by sending worse people, John would kill them too. He closed his eyes, not sleeping but resting, building energy for the violence to come. Beside him, Daisy's breathing deepened into sleep, paws twitching with dog dreams that knew nothing of empires or rebellions, or men who declared war for love. In 24 hours, John Wick would walk into an Imperial Security Bureau headquarters and commit what the Empire would call terrorism. He called it accounting. Every action had consequences. The Empire had posted a bounty on a man for the crime of existing with a dog. Now they'd learn what that man could do when given motivation and opportunity. The lesson would be written in blood and blaster scoring, and it would be taught by the deadliest student the galaxy had never wanted to meet. The hours before the mission passed with the strange elasticity of time that John remembered from his continental days, simultaneously too fast and achingly slow. He spent them studying the ISB headquarters hologram, memorizing every corridor, every turret placement, every potential obstacle between the entry point and Captain Thrace's office. Kessa watched him work, her sniper's patience recognizing kindred focus. You do this every time? Memorize entire facilities. Every time, John confirmed. Architecture is predictable. People aren't. Knowing the terrain means one less variable. Thrace won't be alone, she said. His security detail rotates. But there are always at least 2 stormtroopers outside his office, plus roving patrols that pass every 12 minutes. 12 minutes is a long time. For you, maybe. Kessa adjusted her rifle's scope, making microscopic calibrations. Most people freeze in combat. Their training evaporates, their hands shake. They forget everything except the fact that someone's shooting at them. You don't freeze, do you? No. Why? John considered the question. In his old life, therapists, the few times the high table had mandated them after, particularly messy contracts, had called it dissociation. the ability to separate the thinking mind from the acting body, to become pure function without emotional interference. Helen had called it armor he wore to survive a profession that ate souls. Because hesitation gets you killed, John said simply. And I'm not ready to die yet. Not until Daisy is safe, Kessa observed, glancing at the dog sleeping near the water bowl. Not until then. She nodded slowly. I had a pet once. Took a cat I found on Tatooine after the Empire burned my village. Took care of it for 3 years while I learned to shoot, to kill, to be useful to the rebellion. Her hands stilled on the rifle. A stormtrooper patrol shot it during a raid. Not because it was dangerous, because one of them thought it was funny. What did you do? Tracked that patrol for 6 months. Learned their routes, their habits. Which trooper had killed my cat? Kessa's eyes were distant, remembering. Put a blaster bolt through his helmet from 800 meters. Never confirmed if it was the right one, but it didn't matter by then. They'd all watched it happen. They were all complicit. John understood. How many since then? Stormtroopers I've killed? Kessa smiled without humor. Stopped counting at 50. Now it's just numbers. Bodies. Statistics. In the rebellion's ledger of small victories against an empire that doesn't notice. They'll notice eventually. Will they? She gestured at the safe house's sparse accommodations. We've been fighting for years. Killed thousands of Imperials. Destroyed installations, freed prisoners, sabotaged supply lines. And the Empire just continues. Bigger, stronger, more entrenched. Sometimes I wonder if we're actually fighting or just making ourselves feel better about our powerlessness. It was the kind of existential crisis John had seen in high-table enforcers who'd been in the game too long. The moment when body count stopped meaning anything, when violence became routine, when the question shifted from, am I winning, to what am I even fighting for? You're fighting because the alternative is surrender, John said. And surrender means accepting that power always wins. That cruelty goes unpunished. That good people die while bad people thrive. Maybe you can't destroy the empire, but you can make it expensive. Make every occupation cost blood. Make every atrocity come with consequences. Eventually, enough consequences change the calculation. You really believe that? I have to. John met her eyes. Because if I don't believe that actions matter, that one person can make a difference, then Helen died for nothing, and I'm just a killer pretending to have purpose. Kessa studied him for a long moment. You're not what I expected. Mara said you were a precision instrument. Cold, efficient, ruthless. But you're not cold. You're burning. Controlled burning, but burning nonetheless. Is there a difference? Yes. She returned to her rifle maintenance. Cold killers eventually lose themselves, become what they fight. But people who burn for something, for someone, they stay human. More dangerous, maybe, but human. Before John could respond, Vri called from the communication station. Wick, you should see this. John crossed to where the Badhan hunched over holographic displays showing news feeds from across Nar Shadaa. Every channel carried the same story. Imperial lockdown in the upper industrial district. Increased security sweeps. Civilians being questioned and sometimes detained. The checkpoint attack, Vri explained. Empires using it to justify expanded operations. Random searches, identification verification, curfews in certain sectors. They're calling it enhanced security. Measures to protect citizens from terrorist elements. Terrorists, John repeated. The word tasted familiar. Every authority structure throughout history called its opposition terrorists when they couldn't control the narrative. That's you, Vri said. The checkpoint killer. They've released your description. Human male. Approximately 6 feet tall, dark hair. Armed with primitive and modern weapons. They're not using the word terrorist yet, but that's where this goes. First they paint you as dangerous. Then criminal. Then ideologically motivated. Finally, they make supporting you equivalent to treason. How long until they connect me to the rebellion? Unknown. Depends if anyone at the checkpoint saw you talking to Mara, or if ISB intelligence pieces together your movements. Vria's fur rippled nervously. But once they make that connection, they'll stop hunting you as an individual and start treating you as a rebellion asset. That means harsher responses, collective punishment, reprisals against suspected sympathizers. Then we finish this before they make the connection, Mara said, entering from the sleeping quarters. She'd changed into tactical gear, dark clothing, armored vest. Equipment harness bristling with tools and weapons. 2,100 hours. We move on ISB headquarters. Thrace dies, we expose his crimes. And the narrative becomes about Imperial abuse rather than rebellion terrorism. Thane emerged behind her, carrying a heavy blaster. Cannon that looked like it could punch. Through vehicle armor. I've rigged charges on the power junction 3 blocks from the headquarters. When you need an exit, I blow them. Lights go out across 6 sectors. And you disappear in the chaos. What about civilian infrastructure? John asked. Emergency services, hospitals, residential life support? All on independent backup systems, Thane assured him. This just kills commercial and military grids. People will be inconvenienced, not endangered. John nodded. Even in war, there were lines. Killing soldiers was justice. Endangering civilians was terrorism. The High Table had taught him that distinction. If you couldn't complete a contract without excessive collateral damage, you declined the contract. Final equipment check, Mara ordered. Wick, you're carrying both DL-44s, the E-11 Vibroknife, and the personal shield generator. Ammunition, power packs, emergency medkit. Vree gave you a comm unit. Keeps you connected to our Overwatch. Don't lose it, and don't let ISB capture it with intact encryption. John inventoried his gear with practiced efficiency. Everything was there, everything functioned. The flex armor sat comfortably under his clothing now, familiar after 24 hours of wear. The weapons were alien technology, but operated on principles he understood. Point. Fire, target stops moving. Daisy sat watching the preparations, tail wagging slowly. The dog had no concept of what was about to happen, no understanding that his human was preparing to walk into a fortress filled with people who would kill him on sight. John knelt, scratching behind the beagle's ears. You stay here. These people will take care of you. I'll be back. The dog licked his hand, trusting absolutely. He'll be safe, Mara promised. Vree stays here for network operations. He'll watch Daisy until you return. And if I don't return, then we make sure he gets somewhere safe. Outer Rim, maybe. Some smuggler with a soft heart who needs a ship's pet. Mara's expression was serious. But you are coming back, Wick. Because you're not done yet. Thrace is just the beginning. She was right. John had known it since seeing the Imperial crackdown on the news feeds. Killing Thrace would solve nothing strategically. One ISB captain removed, another promoted to replace him. The machine would continue grinding. But that wasn't the point. The point was that Captain Van Thrace had decided. John Wick was a problem requiring a bounty. Had made it personal through the simple act of bureaucratic categorization. And in making it personal, had triggered a response that transcended strategy or logic. John Wick didn't forgive bureaucratic threats. He eliminated them. Time. Kessa called from her observation post. 20-30 hours. We need to move if we're hitting the window. The team mobilized with professional precision. Kessa and Mara headed for the Overwatch position, a maintenance tower with clear sight lines to ISB headquarters. Thane took position near his demolition charges, ready to create the distraction exit. Vree remained at the communication hub, fingers already dancing across interfaces. John checked his weapons one final time. The DL-44s were fully charged, gas cartridges fresh. The E-11 had a full cylinder. The Vibroknife was sharp enough to split molecules. The shield generator blinked green, ready to absorb the first direct hit that might otherwise kill him. You ready? Mara asked, pausing at the safe house exit. John looked at Daisy one last time. The dog had curled up near Vria's station, already dozing. Safe, protected, alive, everything that mattered. I'm ready, John said. They moved through Nar Shada's lower levels, a ghost team navigating passages that only locals knew existed. The moon's perpetual twilight provided cover, but so did the simple fact that most civilians had learned not to notice. People who moved with purpose and weapons. The ISB headquarters loomed above them after 20 minutes of careful navigation, a gray permacrete tower that radiated bureaucratic menace. Floodlights illuminated the perimeter. Stormtroopers patrolled in pairs. Security cameras swept in overlapping patterns. A fortress designed to be impregnable. John had infiltrated worse. Overwatch in position, Kessa's voice crackled in John's earpiece. I have eyes on the main entrance. For stormtroopers, 2 rotating patrols, sensor coverage on all approaches. Vree, Mara said. Status. slicing their network now. Security protocols are adequate. Not brilliant, but adequate. Give me 3 minutes. John waited in the shadows, breathing steady, heart rate controlled. Around him, the moon's usual chaos continued. Ships landing, merchants arguing, beings going about their lives while one man prepared to walk into hell, armed with stolen blasters and righteous fury. I'm in, re-announced, cascading their sensor grid in. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 blackout. The ISB headquarters floodlights flickered and died. Security cameras swiveled aimlessly, their sensors dark. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in red that reduced visibility and created shadows where none had existed before. 8 minutes started counting down. You're clear, Kessa confirmed. Stormtroopers are confused. No organized response yet. Entry window is now. John moved. He crossed the kill zone in seconds, reaching the headquarters service entrance where Vree had overridden the electronic locks. The door slid open silently. John entered the Empire's fortress, leaving behind the relative safety of the streets. Inside, red emergency lighting painted everything in shades of blood. ISB personnel were gathering in corridors, voices raised in confusion and irritation. None of them had weapons drawn. This was a technical failure, not an active threat in their minds. They were wrong. John moved through sublevel 1, past administrative offices and storage rooms, heading for the access shaft that would take him to sublevel 3. The building's layout matched his memorization perfectly. 30 meters ahead, left turn, service elevator. A door opened. An ISB agent stepped out, datapad in hand, annoyed at the power failure. John shot him once in the chest with the DL-44. The weapon's report loud in the enclosed space. The agent collapsed, surprise frozen on his face. The 8-minute window was now a countdown to discovery. John began running. The service elevator descended with agonizing slowness, each second ticking away from John's 8-minute window. 4 minutes remained. Somewhere above him, ISB personnel were discovering the body. Somewhere in the building's security hub, technicians were trying to restore sensor systems and wondering why their emergency protocols had failed. The elevator opened to sublevel 3. 2 stormtroopers stood in the corridor, checking their rifles, confused by the blackout but not yet alarmed. They turned as John emerged, hands reaching for weapons they'd held casually. Too slow. John fired the DL-44 twice in rapid succession. The first stormtrooper took a bolt to the chest plate that knocked him backward into the wall. The second shot caught the gap between helmet and neck seal. Both troopers collapsed in a clatter of plastoid armor. Contact, sublevel 3. A voice crackled over their fallen comm units. Unknown hostile, armed in. John crushed the comm under his boot and kept moving. The corridor stretched ahead, exactly as the hologram had shown, for automated turrets mounted at intervals. Currently in standby mode thanks to the blackout. Captain Thrace's office sat at the far end. 60 meters of corridor that would become a kill zone the moment sensors came back online. John checked his chronometer. 3 minutes, 20 seconds. He ran. The turrets remained dormant as he passed beneath them, their targeting systems blind in the blackout. John's boots made almost no sound on the polished floor. Years of infiltration work teaching him how to move quickly without broadcasting presence. Thrace's office door was reinforced durasteel, the kind designed to survive explosions. 2 more stormtroopers stood guard outside, alert now, having heard the weapons fire. Stop, one shouted, raising his E-11. Hands where we can see them. John's DL-44 barked twice. The first stormtrooper went down. The second managed to fire a wild shot that splashed against the corridor wall before John's. Third shot punched through his helmet. 4 bodies in 30 seconds. The building's security would be converging now, following the sound of blaster fire, preparing to lock down the sublevel. John placed a breaching charge against the door's locking mechanism, one of Thane's gifts, a small-shaped explosive that focused energy precisely. 3 seconds later, the door blew inward. Captain Van Thrace sat behind his desk, hand already reaching for the panic button. John shot him through the wrist. Thrace screamed, cratering backward in his chair, clutching the ruined joint. Blood spattered across datapads displaying personnel files, detention orders, signed authorizations for interrogations that probably ended in death. John entered the office, sealing the damaged door behind him. It wouldn't hold long, but it didn't need to. This would be fast. You. Thrace gasped, staring at John with wide eyes. The bounty. The checkpoint killer. Yes. John crossed to the desk. DL-44 aimed at Thrace's head. 2 minutes, 40 seconds remained. You posted a bounty on me. What? Standard. Standard protocol. Thrace stammered, pressing his good hand against the bleeding wrist. Unknown armed individual, suspicious behavior, potential rebel operative. I was just doing my job. Your job. John gestured at the datapads with his free hand. Signing detention orders. Making people disappear. 43 in the past month, according to Rebellion intelligence. How many of those 43 are still alive? They were criminals. Insurgents. Threats to Imperial security. They were beings who said things you didn't like, who supported ideas the Empire found inconvenient, who existed in ways that didn't fit your neat categories. John's voice was flat, emotionless. You made them disappear because it was easy and no one held you accountable. You can't kill me. Thrace tried backing further into his chair, panic overriding pain. I'm ISB. Killing me brings down the full weight of Imperial intelligence. They'll hunt you to the edges of the galaxy. They're already hunting me. You made sure of that with your bounty. That was nothing. A standard alert. If you'd just left, disappeared into the outer rim, you'd have been fine. Thrace's eyes darted toward the sealed door, where voices were shouting and something heavy was being brought to bear. Please. I have a family. A daughter on Coruscant. She's only 8 years old. You can't. You have a daughter. John's hand tightened on the DL-44. Did the people you disappeared have children? Did they have families waiting for them? Did you think about that when you signed their detention orders? It's not the same. I serve the Empire. I maintain order. Without people like me, there would be chaos. Thrace's voice rose, desperate. You're just a killer. A murderer. You have no authority, no legitimacy. You're nothing but a terrorist. Outside, something massive slammed into the door. The durasteel held, but barely. Voices coordinated. Security teams preparing a proper breach. 1 minute, 50 seconds. You're right, John said quietly. I have no authority, no legitimacy, no mandate except the one I give myself. He aimed carefully. But I have something you don't. I have consequences. Wait. John pulled the trigger. The blaster bolt took Thrace through the forehead, the man's final expression a mixture of disbelief and terror. He slumped in his chair, blood pooling. On datapads that listed the names of people who'd never see justice for what had been done to them. John turned to the computer terminal, pulling a data spike from his harness, another gift from Vri. He plugged it in, initiating the upload protocol. The spike would copy every file on Thrace's system, detention orders, interrogation recordings, authorization codes, evidence of crimes that the Empire pretended didn't exist. 30 seconds to upload. The door buckled under another massive impact. Hinges groaned. Voices shouted orders. Prepare for hostile breach. Authorization for lethal force. All units converge. John's shield generator blinked amber, sensing the imminent threat. 20 seconds. He used the time to stage Thrace's body, positioning it so security cameras, when they came back online, would capture the perfect image. An ISB captain dead at his desk, surrounded by evidence of his crimes. Killed by someone the Empire couldn't stop. A message written in blood and bureaucracy. 10 seconds. The data spike completed its upload and ejected. John pocketed it, then turned to the office's exterior window. Sublevel 3 meant he was still above ground, 15 meters up, overlooking the street. 5 seconds. The door exploded inward. Stormtroopers flooded through, blasters raised, voices screaming for surrender. John shot out the window. Reinforced transparisteel. Shattered under sustained fire from the E-11. Warning alarms shrieked. John holstered his weapons and jumped. 15 meters through darkness. Emergency lighting flashing around him. The ground rushing up with terminal velocity. John hit the Duracrete in a controlled roll. Flex armor absorbing impact that would have shattered unprotected bones. Pain lanced through his shoulder. Not broken, but badly bruised. Wick status. Mara's voice in his earpiece, sharp with concern. Target eliminated. Exiting via ground level. John was already moving, limping slightly but functional. Behind him, Stormtroopers appeared in the shattered window, taking aim. Blaster fire stitched across the pavement. John's shield generator flared, absorbing 2 direct hits before guttering out with a mechanical whine. The third shot grazed his leg, burning through flex armor and flesh. Not deep, but painful. Thane, distraction now. Mara ordered. 3 blocks away, shaped charges detonated simultaneously. Power junctions exploded in cascading failures. Lights died across 6 sectors. Emergency sirens wailed. Civilians screamed. Chaos bloomed like a dark flower. John disappeared into it. He moved through the suddenly darkened streets with the confidence of someone who'd operated in worse conditions. The leg wound was manageable, cauterized by the blaster's heat. Painful, but not bleeding significantly. His shoulder throbbed from the fall, but all the important parts still worked. Overwatch has lost visual, Kessa reported. Too much smoke from the power junctions. Wick, you need to navigate to extraction point Charlie. 3 blocks north, 2 east. John oriented himself by the distant glow of fires and began moving. Around him, Nar Shadaa's residents reacted to the sudden blackout with varying degrees of panic and opportunism. Looters smashed windows. Security forces tried establishing order. Somewhere, Imperial patrols were mobilizing, following the trail of destruction back to its source. ISB headquarters is going berserk, Vri reported. Full lockdown, every available unit deployed for pursuit. Comm traffic indicating they found Thrace's body. Oh no. What? Mara demanded. They're calling it in, not just to local garrison. They're routing emergency communications to the Star Destroyer Inexorable in orbit. Captain-level casualty in ISB headquarters. They're escalating this to Navy Command. John kept moving, processing this information. A Star Destroyer meant orbital fire support, atmospheric deployment of entire battalions, resources that dwarfed anything a moon-based garrison could muster. How long until the inexorable response? Mara asked. Unknown. Could be hours, could be minutes. Depends on whether they consider this a serious threat or local incompetence. Vri paused. But if they do deploy, Wick, you need to be off this moon. Today. Now. Before. They lock down all spaceports and start conducting door-to-door searches. Negative, John said, ducking into an alley as a stormtrooper patrol rushed past. I'm not leaving Daisy. Then get to extraction. We'll figure out the rest at the safe house. John emerged from the alley into a marketplace, where panicked vendors were securing their goods against looters. He moved through the chaos. Just another figure in dark clothing, indistinguishable from dozens of others. 2 blocks north. Turn right. 1 more block. The extraction point was an abandoned warehouse where Thane waited with a speeder bike, the Zobrik's massive frame barely fitting on the civilian vehicle. You look terrible, Thane observed as John climbed on behind him. Bleeding, limping, and you smell like blaster discharge. Successful mission? Thrace is dead. Then it was a very successful mission. Thane gunned the speeder, launching them into traffic at illegal speeds. Hold on. Imperial patrols are swarming, and I don't plan to get stopped. They wove through Nar Shada's aerial traffic, dodging cargo haulers and passenger transports, staying low enough to avoid military sensor sweeps, but high enough to maintain speed. Behind them, the ISB headquarters blazed with emergency lighting, a monument to Imperial authority that had just learned it wasn't untouchable. Vri, John said into his comm. Release Thrace's files. Every detention order, every interrogation recording, every piece of evidence. Flood the local networks. Already done, Vri replied. Broadcasting on every frequency, civilian and military. Can't stop the signal now. It's cascading through relay points. Across 3 sectors. The Empire can shut it down eventually, but not before thousands of beings see what Captain Thrace really was. Good. Let them see. Let the civilians understand that ISB captains signed death warrants from comfortable offices. Let the Empire explain why they employed someone who made beings disappear for thought crime. The safe house appeared ahead, its entrance hidden in layers of urban infrastructure. Thane brought the speeder down in a screaming deceleration, parking it in the concealed bay where it would be stripped for parts and rendered untraceable. Inside, Mara was already reviewing tactical displays. Kessa was breaking down her rifle. Vri hunched over communication terminals, monitoring the fallout. And Daisy was sleeping peacefully near the water bowl, tail thumping once when John entered. John knelt, ignoring the pain in his leg and shoulder, and ran his hand along the dog's soft fur. Alive. Safe. The reason for everything. You did it, Mara said, approaching with a medkit. Sit. Let me treat those wounds before you bleed on our equipment. John sat, allowing Mara to cut away burned flex armor and expose the leg wound. It was shallow, painful, but already starting to close thanks to the cauterization. She applied back to gel, the Star Wars Galaxy's answer to everything, from minor burns to lightsaber wounds, and sealed it with synthetic skin. The shoulder? She asked. Bruised. Nothing broken. You're lucky. That fall should have killed you. I've had worse falls. Mara finished her medical work and stood back, studying him. The Empire knows it was you. They have you on security footage entering the building, fighting through their guards, killing Thrace. Your face is going to be on every Imperial network within the hour. Good, John said. Let them know who's hunting them. That's not strategy. That's ego. No. John met her eyes. That's message. The Empire thinks they're anonymous. That stormtrooper armor makes them interchangeable. That ISB captains can sign detention orders without personal risk. I'm showing them they're wrong. Every Imperial who participates in oppression has a face, a name, and vulnerability. You're making yourself the target, Kessa observed from across the safe house. I was already the target. Now I'm just being honest about it. Vree turned from his station, ears flat against his skull. The Star Destroyer Inexorable is moving. Sensors detect atmospheric entry patterns. They're deploying ground forces. Estimate 2 full battalions plus air support. ETA to Nar Shada's surface, 90 minutes. 2 full battalions. Approximately 1,500 stormtroopers, plus AD-STS, gunships, and whatever other Imperial hardware a Star Destroyer could disgorge. All of it dedicated to finding one man. They're taking this seriously, Thane said unnecessarily. We need to relocate, Mara decided. This safe house is compromised, too close to the attack site. Vree, start erasing our digital footprints. Kessa, Thane, prep emergency supplies. Wick, she paused. You're coming with us. No arguments. You're rebellion now, whether you accept it or not. John wanted to argue, wanted to maintain his independence, his separation from ideologies and causes. But Mara was right. He'd killed an ISB captain in his office, stolen classified files, and broadcast Imperial crimes across planetary networks. The Empire would treat him as rebellion regardless of his personal beliefs. Where, he asked. Lower levels. There are smuggler warrens the Empire doesn't know about. Places where even Star Destroyers can't reach. We'll hide, wait for the crackdown to ease. Then figure out our next move. Mara collected her gear. Unless you have a better plan? John looked at Daisy, the dog now awake and watching with patient eyes. Leaving Nar Shadaa meant finding transport, avoiding Imperial blockades, starting over somewhere else. But staying meant facing 1,500. Stormtroopers with depleted ammunition and nowhere to run. The mathematics weren't good, but John had survived impossible mathematics before. We stay, he said. We fight. And we make the Empire pay for every meter of this moon they think they control. Mara stared at him. That's suicide. Maybe. John checked his DL-44s, reloading fresh power packs. But I'm tired of running. Tired of watching tyranny spread because no one's willing to make a stand. Thrace is dead, but the Empire he served remains. More captains signing more detention orders. More stormtroopers checking more civilians. More beings disappearing into systems designed to crush hope. You're one man, Kessa said quietly. One man with a dog, against a galactic empire. I'm one man who killed 8 stormtroopers and an ISB captain in 2 days. John corrected. One man who's proven that the Empire bleeds. That's more than most people accomplish in a lifetime of quiet compliance. Thane laughed, that deep rumbling sound. You're absolutely insane. I love it. Vree, cancel the evacuation. We're staying. We're fighting. And we're going to make those Imperial bastards wish they'd never heard the name John Wick. This is a terrible idea, Vree muttered. But his paws were already moving across interfaces, pulling up maps of Nar Shadaa's defensive positions, cataloging Imperial force deployments, calculating ways to turn the moon's urban chaos into a weapon. Mara shook her head, but she was smiling. Grim smile of someone who'd made peace with death a long time ago. Fine. We make our stand here. But we do it smart. Guerrilla tactics, hit and run, make them chase shadows. We can't win a straight fight, but we can make occupation impossibly expensive. Agreed, John said. Outside, somewhere in Nar Shadaa's polluted sky, a star destroyer descended through clouds like a dagger falling from heaven. 1,500 stormtroopers prepared for deployment. Believing their armor and numbers made them invincible, they were about to meet a man who'd spent 20 years, proving that nothing was invincible, that everything bled if you knew where to cut, and that sometimes one person with nothing left to lose was more dangerous than entire armies. The Empire was coming for John Wick. He'd be waiting. The Star Destroyer inexorable hung over Nar Shadaa like a steel cathedral. 3 kilometers of Imperial engineering that blocked out entire sections of sky. From the safehouse's observation port, John watched as deployment ships descended, Lambda-class shuttles disgorging, stormtroopers in precise formations, AT-ST walkers clanking down magnetic ramps, TIE fighters screaming through atmosphere on patrol vectors. Overwhelming force applied with mechanical precision. The Empire's answer to everything. They're establishing a perimeter around the ISB headquarters. Vri reported, monitoring Imperial communications. Checkpoints every 3 blocks. Aerial patrols every 6 minutes. AT-STs positioned at major intersections. They're turning the entire upper city into a kill box. Good, John said. Predictable patterns mean exploitable weaknesses. You're not actually planning to attack Imperial forces while they're at full alert? Mara asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. I'm planning to make them pay for occupation. Whether they're alert or sleeping. Doesn't change that. John was field stripping his DL-44s, checking every component, with the care of someone who understood that weapons malfunction at the worst possible moments. The Empire thinks numbers equal victory. More soldiers, more walkers, more ships. But numbers create logistics problems. Supply lines, communication bottlenecks, coordination failures. He's right, Thane said, studying tactical maps. 2 battalions dropped into urban environment without proper preparation time. They're strong but inflexible. Hit them in unexpected locations. Force them to spread resources. Make every decision reactive instead of proactive. Kessa nodded from her position. Sniper tactics. Pick off stragglers, retreat before they can respond. Strike somewhere else before they reposition. Classic guerrilla doctrine. Not just stragglers, John corrected. Officers, communications specialists, anyone coordinating their operations. Cut off the head repeatedly and the body flails. Vria's ears twitched nervously. You understand they'll respond with increasingly brutal tactics? Mass arrests, collective punishment, possibly orbital bombardment. If they decide you're worth destroying infrastructure, they won't bomb their own ISB headquarters, Mara observed. And they can't risk damaging the Hutt-controlled sectors that would violate treaties that keep smuggling revenue flowing to Imperial coffers. They're constrained by politics even when they pretend to have unlimited power. John reassembled his weapons, the mechanical rhythm soothing. In his previous life, before Helen, he'd performed this same ritual before continental contracts. The meditation of violence preparation, focusing mind and body on the singular purpose of making someone stop breathing. He'd thought that life was behind him, thought love had burned away the darkness. But love hadn't burned anything away, just buried it beneath happiness that made the darkness unnecessary. Now necessity had returned, and with it, the skills that had made him Baba Yaga. First target, John said, pulling up holographic maps. AT-ST Patrol Route Delta 7. 2 walkers, minimal infantry support, passing through the industrial sector every 40 minutes. We disable them, scavenge ammunition, and disappear before reinforcements arrive. AT-STs have armor plating designed to resist blaster fire, Thane noted. You'll need heavy weapons or precision targeting to bring them down. I'll use both. John pointed to a narrow passage between industrial structures. We funnel them here, where their height becomes liability. Thane rigs charges on the building's support columns. When the walkers enter the kill zone, we drop the structures on top of them. Crude but effective, Kessa said approvingly. Assuming we can lure them into that specific passage. Leave that to me, John said. I'll be visible enough to draw pursuit, evasive enough to keep them following. Once they're committed, Thane detonates. Kessa provides covering fire, and Mara extracts me. And what do? Ree asked. Monitor Imperial communications. Give us real-time updates on their response patterns. Calculate their deployment vectors so we can stay one step ahead. It was the kind of plan that required perfect timing, absolute trust, and acceptance that failure meant death. John had executed similar operations with high-table assets, coordinated strikes, against protected targets, relying on specialists who knew their roles. The difference was that high-table operatives were professionals who'd trained together for years. The rebellion cell was competent but improvised, adapting to situations rather than controlling them. But improvisation was all they had. We move in 2 hours, Mara decided. That gives Imperial forces time to settle into their patrol patterns. Get comfortable, start believing they've secured the area. Then we remind them that nothing here is secure. The team dispersed to final preparations. Thane gathered explosives, muttering calculations about load-bearing columns and structural integrity. Kessa disassembled and cleaned her rifle for the 3rd time. Sniper's obsession with equipment reliability. Mara reviewed contingency plans, preparing for everything that could go wrong. John sat with Daisy, the dog curled against his leg, oblivious to the violence being planned around him. The beagle's breathing was steady, peaceful, trusting that his human would keep him safe. Helen had trusted him too, trusted that he could leave the killing behind, build something better than blood and contracts and continental politics. And he had, for 5 beautiful years. 5 years where John Wick ceased to exist and only John remained. Husband, lover, guardian of a simple happiness that required no violence. Then cancer had taken her, and the world had reminded him that peace was temporary, that eventually someone always took what you loved. The universe had just taken longer this time, requiring an entire dimensional shift before stealing his last piece of Helen. You're thinking about her. Mara's voice, quiet, non-intrusive. John didn't ask how she knew. Always. What was she like? Light. The word emerged before John could filter it. Everything about her was light. Her laugh, her smile, the way she saw good in people, who'd long since abandoned it. He ran his hand along Daisy's fur. She saw good in me. Don't know why, but she did. Maybe because it was there, Mara suggested. Buried, but there. Or maybe she was wrong, and I convinced myself to believe her. Does it matter? Wrong or right, she changed you. Made you someone who cares about collateral damage, who worries about civilian casualties, who's fighting an empire for a dog. Mara sat beside him, careful not to crowd. Most people who join the rebellion do it for politics. Freedom, democracy, abstract principles. You're doing it for love. That's either the purest motivation or the most dangerous. Probably both. They sat in silence, the safe house around them busy with lethal preparation. Somewhere above, the Star Destroyer continued disgorging troops, transforming Nar Shadaa's upper levels into an occupied war zone. Civilians were being questioned, detained, processed through Imperial bureaucracy that ground beings into compliance or corpses. The same bureaucracy that had produced Captain Thrace, his detention orders, his casual cruelty wrapped in proper authorization codes. John had killed 1 captain. The Empire had thousands more. But numbers only mattered if you tried to fight them all at once. Continental training had taught him the alternative. Pick targets carefully. Strike precisely. Make every kill count for something beyond simple body count. 2 hours, Mara said, standing. Rest if you can. The ADST patrol won't be easy, and we'll need to move fast after. John doubted he'd rest. Rest meant dreams, and dreams meant Helen's face. Her voice asking him to be better than the darkness. But he closed his eyes anyway, letting Daisy's warmth anchor him to the present moment. 90 minutes passed in tense preparation and forced calm. Then Vree called out. ADST Patrol Delta 7 entering the industrial sector. 2 walkers, 6 stormtrooper escorts, moving along predicted route. ETA to kill zone, 12 minutes. The team mobilized. Thane had already positioned his charges. Enough explosive to bring down 2 5-story structures. Kessa took position on a maintenance platform with sight, lines covering the kill zone, and 3 escape routes. Mara readied the extraction speeder, engine idling, ready to move on John's signal. John checked his weapons one final time. DL-44's loaded, E-11 charged, vibroblade sharp. The personal shield generator blinked green. 12 hours had passed. Enough time for it to recharge and offer one more chance at survival. Daisy stays with Free, John said unnecessarily. The dog was already secured in the safe house's most protected section, away from windows and potential blast zones. We know, Vree replied. Good hunting, Wick. Try not to die dramatically. John left the safe house, moving through maintenance tunnels toward the industrial sector. The area was older, less maintained than the commercial districts, perfect for ambush operations. Narrow passages between structures, limited aerial access for TIE fighters, terrain that favored infantry over vehicles. He emerged 3 blocks from the kill zone, positioning himself where the AT-ST patrol would have clear sight lines. Then he activated a small thermal beacon, another of Vria's tools that would register on Imperial sensors as a suspicious heat signature. Bait cast. Now to see if the Empire took it. Patrol has detected anomalous energy signature, Vree reported through the comm. Yes, they're diverting to investigate. 2 walkers changing course, stormtrooper escorts following. You have their attention. John began moving toward the kill zone, keeping pace that suggested evasion without looking like obvious bait. Behind him, the distinctive mechanical stomp of AT-ST walkers grew louder, 2-legged war machines that towered over infantry, chin-mounted blaster cannons that could vaporize cover and targets simultaneously. One walker appeared around a corner, its head swiveling as sensors tracked John's movement. The pilot's voice crackled through external speakers. Unknown individual. Halt and identify yourself. John ran. Blaster fire stitched across Duracrete where he'd been standing. The AT-ST pursued, joined by its twin, both machines accelerating to combat speed. Stormtroopers followed on foot, spreading out to cut off escape routes. Standard Imperial tactics. Overwhelming firepower applied to obvious threats. John led them deeper into the industrial maze, sprinting through passages barely wide enough for the walkers. The machines had to navigate carefully, their height and bulk making them vulnerable to terrain they couldn't simply walk over. Approaching kill zone. Kessa's voice, calm and focused. 50 meters. Walkers committed to the passage. Stormtroopers falling behind. John could see it ahead, the narrow section where 2 structures leaned toward each other, creating a canyon of Duracrete and steel. The AT-STs would fit, but barely, their heads almost brushing the buildings. Perfect. He sprinted through, the walkers following eagerly. Pilots probably thinking they had their target trapped. Now, John shouted. Thane's charges detonated simultaneously. The 2 structures groaned. Support columns vaporizing in shaped explosions that directed force inward. Duracrete and steel began falling. Thousands of tons of urban infrastructure collapsing into the passage. The lead AT-ST tried backing up. Too slow. Debris crashed down onto its head, crushing the command pod, killing the pilot instantly. The walker's legs locked. Mechanical death, throws holding it upright even as more rubble piled around it. The second walker's pilot was smarter or more panicked. He fired upward, blaster cannons trying to clear a path through falling debris. It bought him seconds. Then a support beam, 10 tons of reinforced steel, crashed down across the walkers. Midsection, folding it like paper. Both walkers were down. 8 seconds, start to finish. Stormtroopers regrouping, Kessa reported. They're calling for backup. You need to move. John was already moving, circling back through the debris field. The stormtroopers were disorganized, taking cover, trying to understand. What had just killed 2 heavily armed walkers in less time than it took to file a situation report. John shot the first one through a gap in cover. The second returned fire, wild, panicked shots that came nowhere close. John's third shot found the visor. 2 down. The remaining 4 stormtroopers broke formation, running for the passage exit where they could call for support. Kessa's rifle spoke once. A stormtrooper collapsed mid-stride, helmet cracked. The others scattered. John pursued, methodical, efficient. 2 more shots, 2 more bodies. The last stormtrooper made it to the passage exit before Kessa's second shot dropped him. Silence held the industrial sector. 2 destroyed AT-STs, 8 dead stormtroopers, and a message written in wreckage and bodies. The Empire isn't invincible. Their walkers fall. Their soldiers die, and someone is making them pay for occupation. Vree, John said into his calm. Broadcast coordinates of this site on civilian networks. Make sure everyone knows what happened here. 2 Imperial walkers destroyed, crew killed, occupation forces neutralized. Broadcasting now, Vree confirmed. Also, you should know, Imperial response is massive. They're deploying airborne units, redirecting 3 more AT-ST patrols to your location. And the Star Destroyer is preparing TIE bomber strikes on suspected insurgent positions. Good, John said, already moving toward extraction. Let them waste resources chasing me. Every bomber they deploy here is one not bombing someone else. Mara appeared with the speeder, Thane riding shotgun with his heavy blaster. That was beautiful chaos. The Empire is losing their minds trying to figure out how rebels took down 2 walkers with building demolition. Because we didn't fight like rebels, John said, climbing onto the speeder. We fought like criminals. No honor, no fair fights, just identify weakness and exploit it. They raced through the industrial sector, staying low, avoiding main thoroughfares where Imperial patrols were converging. Behind them, the wreckage smoldered. And somewhere in the bureaucratic machinery of Imperial command, officers were filing reports about impossible losses. Back at the safe house, Daisy greeted John with enthusiastic tail wagging, completely unaware that his human had just destroyed military hardware worth more than most planets' annual revenue. Vree was monitoring half a dozen comm channels simultaneously, ears twitching with stress. The civilian networks are going wild. People are calling you the ghost of Nar Shadaa. Others say you're a Jedi survivor, which you're definitely not. The Empire is trying to suppress the broadcasts, but it's spreading too fast. You're becoming a symbol. I'm becoming a target, John corrected. You were already a target, Mara pointed out. Now you're a target that terrifies them. There's a difference. On the holographic display, Imperial forces were redeploying, consolidating positions, preparing for sustained counterinsurgency operations. The 2-battalion deployment was shifting from occupation to active warfare, all because one man had decided the Empire didn't get to threaten his dog without consequences. What's next? Thane asked, clearly energized by the successful operation. John studied the tactical display, mind-calculating ranges, response times, vulnerabilities. The Empire had overwhelming numbers, but numbers required coordination. Coordination required communication. Next, John said, we make it impossible for them to coordinate. We hit their communication relays, jam their frequencies, force them to operate independently. Isolated units make mistakes. Mistakes create opportunities. Divide and conquer, Kessa nodded. Classic strategy. Only strategy that works against superior numbers, John replied. Outside, the Star Destroyer inexorable adjusted position, preparing for expanded operations. More troops would come, more resources deployed, more pressure applied, until either John was captured, or the moon became too expensive to hold. But expense was relative. The Empire could afford to lose soldiers, walkers, resources. They had trillions more where those came from. What they couldn't afford was fear. And John Wick was teaching them to be afraid. The Imperial communication relay sat on a rooftop 12 levels. Above street traffic, a cluster of transmission dishes and sensor arrays, protected by a reinforced bunker and 6 stormtroopers. Standard security for infrastructure. The Empire considered vital, but not critical enough to warrant heavy fortification. A miscalculation John intended to exploit. The relay coordinates communication between ground forces and the inexorable. Vree had explained during the planning session. Destroy it, and they lose real-time orbital support. Ground commanders will have to make decisions independently, which means mistakes, delays, and exploitable gaps. Now John lay prone on an adjacent rooftop, watching the relay through the E-11 scope. The stormtroopers maintained a loose perimeter, confident in their elevation and armor. 2 patrolled the bunker's exterior. 4 remained inside, monitoring equipment and probably complaining about assignment to static defense duty. Kessa, you have the shot? John asked quietly into his calm. 2 exterior guards, yes. Clean sight lines. No wind interference at this range. Her voice carried the calm of someone who'd made harder shots. On your signal. Thane. Charges planted on the rooftop access shaft. 1 minute after you breach, I blow it. Anyone trying to reinforce comes up into a kill zone. The Zabrak sounded, satisfied with his demolition work. Mara, extraction speeder ready. 3 alternate routes planned based on Imperial response vectors. You'll have 4 minutes to complete the objective before they can effectively surround the building. For minutes, more than enough time for what John had planned. Vri, status on Imperial communications? Heavy traffic. They're still coordinating search patterns for you, processing civilian reports of the ghost, and trying to explain to Star Destroyer Command how 2 at STS were destroyed by collapsing buildings. Vria's voice carried dark amusement. Morale is degrading. Stormtroopers are getting nervous, making mistakes. You're in their heads. Good. Fear was as effective as bullets when deployed properly. Execute, John ordered. Kess's rifle coughed twice. Suppressed shots that crossed 300 meters in under a second. Both exterior stormtroopers collapsed. Holes burned through their helmets at the weak points she'd identified. John was already moving, sprinting across the gap between buildings via a maintenance bridge. The rooftop access hatch was exactly where building schematics indicated unlocked, because who would be crazy enough to assault an Imperial facility during maximum alert? The answer walked through that hatch with a DL-44 in each hand. The 4 interior stormtroopers were clustered around communication equipment, focused on their instruments. When John entered, the first died before registering movement. The second managed to turn, raise his rifle, and take 2 bolts to the chest plate that knocked him backward into sensitive electronics. The third and fourth stormtroopers had time to understand they were under attack. Not enough time to do anything about it. John's DL-44s barked in controlled sequence, left hand, right hand, alternating fire that put plasma through gaps in armor with surgical precision. For bodies in 3 seconds, John holstered 1 pistol and pulled explosive charges from his harness, more gifts from Thane, shaped to maximize damage against communication equipment while minimizing structural collapse. He placed them methodically, timer set for 2 minutes. Enough time to exit. Not enough time for anyone to disarm them. Relay neutralized, John reported. Charges set, exiting now. He was halfway across the maintenance bridge when the rooftop access hatch behind him exploded upward. Reinforcements, a full squad of stormtroopers, faster than anticipated. Thane now, John shouted. The charges Thane had planted detonated, vaporizing the access shaft and everyone inside it. But 3 stormtroopers had already reached the rooftop, taking cover behind ventilation units, firing at John's exposed position on the bridge. Blaster bolts sizzled past him. One grazed his shoulder. His shield generator flared, absorbing the hit, then guttered out. The second shot scored across his back, burning through flex armor and flesh. Not deep, but painful. John dropped to 1 knee, both DL-44s tracking targets. 2 stormtroopers went down. The third kept firing, disciplined, covering his position. Then Kess's rifle spoke again. The stormtrooper's helmet cracked, body falling limp. John reached the far building as the charges he'd planted detonated. The communication relay vaporized in a ball of plasma and shrapnel, taking the bunker and remaining equipment with it. Flames licked skyward, visible across multiple sectors. Another Imperial asset destroyed. Another message sent. Imperial response is immediate and panicked, Vri reported. They've lost primary ground-to-orbital coordination. Secondary systems are compensating, but bandwidth is reduced by 60%. Ground commanders are requesting instructions and getting static. John descended through the building's interior, moving fast, ignoring the burns on his shoulder and back. Pain was temporary. Mission completion was permanent. Mara appeared with the speeder at ground level, Thane providing covering fire from the passenger position. John climbed on, and they accelerated into traffic. Just another speeder among thousands. Behind them, Imperial forces converged on the destroyed relay, trying to salvage equipment, searching for insurgents who were already gone. That's 2 operations in 6 hours, Mara said as they navigated toward the safe house. At STS destroyed, communication relay demolished. The Empire is going to escalate again. Let them, John said. His shoulder throbbed, the burn on his back making movement uncomfortable. But discomfort was familiar, manageable. Every escalation requires resources. Resources have limits, even for empires. Optimistic, Thane observed. I like it. completely divorced from reality, but I like it. They reached the safe house through a circuitous route, designed to frustrate pursuit. Inside, Vri was monitoring Imperial communications with increasing concern, ears flat against his skull. Wick, you need to hear this. He amplified an Imperial frequency. An officer's voice, clipped and authoritative, filled the safe house. Unacceptable losses. 2 at STS, a communication relay, 43 casualties in 72 hours. Admiral Kendrick has authorized deployment of advanced countermeasures. Effective immediately. Suspected insurgent locations will be subject to precision orbital strikes. Collateral damage is acceptable if it eliminates the target. Silence held the safe house. Orbital strikes, Kessa said flatly. They're willing to bomb civilian areas. Not willing, Mara corrected. Desperate. We've hurt them badly. Enough that they're abandoning. Restraint. She looked at John. This is what happens when you fight the Empire. They escalate until victory, or they reduce everything to ash. John was having his wounds treated by Thane, the Zabrak applying Bacta with surprising gentleness. The burns were painful but not crippling, second degree at worst. Already beginning to heal under the Bacta's influence. Then we force them to choose ash, John said. Make occupation so expensive, so bloody, so politically costly that they decide Nar Shadaa isn't worth holding. That's not how Empire works, Vri argued. Empire is about control, image, authority. They can't afford to look weak by withdrawing. They'd rather burn the entire moon than admit one man forced them to retreat. Then they burn it. John's voice was quiet, cold, and everyone sees what Empire really means. Not order, not stability, just destruction when you refuse to submit. People will die, Kessa said. Civilians caught in orbital strikes, innocents punished for our actions. People are already dying, John replied. In ISB detention centers, in labor camps, disappeared by bureaucrats who sign forms and never see the faces. The only difference is visibility. We make the violence visible, undeniable, impossible to ignore. Daisy chose that moment to emerge from his sleeping spot, tail wagging, seeking attention from his human. John scratched behind the dog's ears, the simple gesture grounding him in purpose. I'm not trying to start a revolution, John continued. Not trying to topple the Empire or restore democracy. I'm just making them pay for threatening what I love. If that inspires others to resist, fine. If it gets me killed, also fine. But I'm not stopping because they threaten collateral damage. They've always caused collateral damage. Now they're just admitting it publicly. Mara studied him with an expression that mixed respect and concern. You've changed since we met. 3 days ago, you were just a man trying to protect his dog. Now you sound like a revolutionary whether you accept the label or not. I sound like someone who's seen this pattern before, John corrected. Powerful people doing terrible things until someone makes them stop. The high table operated the same way, untouchable, until they weren't. The Russian Bratva ruled their territories absolutely, until someone proved they could bleed. Empire is just the same pattern at galactic scale. And you think you're the someone who proves the Empire can bleed? Vri asked skeptically. I already did. Dead stormtroopers, destroyed walkers, demolished relay. They're bleeding. Question is whether it matters. It matters, a new voice said. Everyone turned. A woman stood at the safe house entrance, human, 50s, wearing nondescript clothing that suggested someone who'd learned to be invisible. Her face was weathered, eyes hard with experience. Who the hell are you? Thane demanded, heavy blaster swinging toward the intruder. Senator Farah Chauvin, Outer Rim representative. She raised her hands, showing she was unarmed. Or former senator, technically. The Empire dissolved the Senate 3 months ago. Now I'm just another dissident looking for allies. Mara's hand was on her blaster. How did you find this safe house? I've been tracking your operations for weeks. The rebellion isn't as invisible as you think. Chauvin lowered her hands carefully. But I'm not here to expose you. I'm here because of him. She nodded toward John. The ghost of Nar Shadaa. The man who's killed more Imperials in 3 days than most. Rebel cells manage in a year. What do you want? John asked. To tell you what you've accomplished. Chauvin pulled a small hollow projector from her pocket, activating it. Images flickered to life, news broadcasts, civilian recordings, Imperial situation reports. Your attacks have spread across planetary networks. The Checkpoint Massacre, Thrace's execution, the AD-ST ambush, the relay destruction. People are talking, arguing, questioning. The hologram showed crowds gathering in public spaces, debates erupting. Beings who'd been silent under occupation suddenly finding their voices. On 17 worlds across the Outer Rim, civilians have staged protests, Chauvin continued. Minor acts of defiance, refusing checkpoint searches, blocking Imperial vehicle convoys, painting anti-Empire graffiti. Nothing that would have happened before you demonstrated that the Empire could be hurt. Protests get people killed, John said. Compliance also gets people killed, just more slowly. Chauvin deactivated the holoprojector. You've given them something they haven't had in years, hope. The belief that resistance means something. That one person can matter against impossible odds. Hope is a liability, John replied. It makes people take risks they shouldn't take. Hope is also necessary, Mara interjected. Without it, no one fights. They just survive until they can't anymore. You've shown them fighting is possible. John wanted to reject this, wanted to maintain that he was just protecting his dog, pursuing personal vengeance, operating according to principles that had nothing to do with inspiration or symbolism. But he couldn't deny the evidence. His actions had rippled beyond their immediate tactical impact. He'd become a story, a legend, a symbol of something larger than one man's grief. The same thing had happened with the High Table. He'd just wanted to retire, live peacefully with Helen. But killing Vigo Tarasov's son, wiping out the Tarasov organization, fighting the entire Continental, it had made him mythological. Baba Yaga, the boogeyman, the man who couldn't be stopped. The galaxy had just given him a new name, the Ghost. Senator Chauvin, John said slowly. What do you want from me? Nothing you weren't already planning to do. Keep fighting. Keep demonstrating that the Empire isn't invincible. Give people something to believe in. She met his eyes. I know you don't care about politics or ideology. You're doing this for personal reasons. But personal reasons inspire people more than abstract principles. Love, loyalty, protection of what matters. Those are motivations everyone understands. I can't be responsible for other people's choices, John said. You already are. The moment you killed those stormtroopers, you accepted that responsibility whether you wanted it or not. Chauvin moved toward the exit. I'm returning to the Outer Rim, carrying recordings of your actions, spreading the story of the ghost who fights an empire for a dog. If you survive, you'll find allies you never knew existed. If you die, you'll become a martyr who inspired thousands. She paused at the doorway. Either way, you've already won the most important battle, proving that defiance is possible. Then she was gone, disappearing into Nar Shada's urban maze. The safe house was quiet for a long moment. Well, Thane said eventually. No pressure. Vria's terminal chimed urgently. Imperial communications are reorganizing. They've established secondary orbital coordination protocols. And he paused, ears flattening completely. They're deploying an Inquisitor. Everyone stopped. Which Inquisitor? Mara asked, voice tight. Third sister. Specialized in urban, counterinsurgency, and force-assisted interrogation. Vri pulled up a profile. Humanoid woman in black armor. Lightsaber visible at her hip. Expression radiating cold authority. She's killed 14 rebel cells personally. Tracked Jedi survivors across 100 systems. The Empire sends her when conventional forces fail. John studied the image. What makes her different from regular soldiers? Force powers, Kessler explained. She can sense lies, predict movements, throw objects without touching them, and her lightsaber cuts through almost anything. Blaster bolts can be deflected. Conventional tactics don't work. Everything has weaknesses, John said. Not Inquisitors. They're trained specifically to counter Jedi combat techniques, which means they're beyond anything a non-force sensitive can handle. Mara's voice carried certainty born from experience. If the third sister is coming for you, Wick, your best move is to leave this moon immediately. John looked down at Daisy, the dog sleeping peacefully against his leg. Leave the moon. Run to another system. Start over somewhere the Empire's attention hadn't focused yet. The practical choice. The survival choice. But John had made the practical choice before. When the High Table excommunicated him, he'd tried running, tried finding safety in neutrality and distance. It hadn't worked then either. I'm not running, John said. Inquisitor or not, force powers or not, she bleeds like everyone else. I'll find the weakness. You're insane, Vree stated flatly. Probably. John checked his DL-44s, reloading them with the methodical care of someone who understood weapons were life. But I'm also the man who killed an ISB captain in his office, destroyed 2 at STS with building demolition, and demolished an Imperial relay while under fire. If this Inquisitor wants me, she can come find me. She will, Mara warned. And when she does, everything you've survived so far will seem easy by comparison. Outside, somewhere in Nar Shada's polluted sky, a shuttle descended from the Star Destroyer, inexorable. Inside rode the third sister, summoned to hunt a ghost, expecting another. Rebel operative with predictable tactics and exploitable fears. She had no idea she was hunting a man who'd faced the high table's best assassins and survived. A man who declared war on the most powerful criminal organization on Earth and won. A man who'd been to hell and back for love, and wasn't impressed by force powers or lightsabers or Imperial authority. The third sister was about to learn the same lesson Captain Thrace had learned, the same lesson the High Table had learned, the same lesson every authority structure throughout history eventually learned when they pushed the wrong person too far. Some people don't break. They just burn hotter. The third sister arrived like a shadow given form, her shuttle touching down on the ISB headquarters landing pad with mechanical precision. John watched from 3 rooftops away through a borrowed macrobinocular scope, studying his next opponent with the same methodical attention he'd once given. High Table Enforcers. She moved with fluid confidence, black armor absorbing light, lightsaber hilt prominent at her hip. 6 stormtroopers flanked her, elite purge troopers, according to Vria's intelligence, specialized in hunting force sensitives. They carried electrostaffs and blaster rifles modified for rapid fire. She's going straight to the site of Thrace's execution, Vree reported through the comm, probably using force abilities to read residual impressions. Reconstruct what happened. Can she track me that way? John asked. Unknown. Force abilities are inconsistent, dependent on the user's skill and connection to whatever mystical energy field powers them. But assume yes. Assume she can sense general emotional states, detect nearby life forms, and predict immediate danger. John lowered the macro binoculars. Prediction meant patterns, and patterns could be manipulated. If the Inquisitor expected rebel tactics, ambushes, explosives, coordinated fire teams, then John needed to provide something else entirely. Something personal, something intimate, something that required the Inquisitor to fight on his terms rather than hers. I'm going after her, John announced. The safe house erupted in protest. Mara stood, shaking her head. That's suicide. Even if you somehow get close, which you won't. Her lightsaber makes conventional weapons irrelevant. She'll cut through your blasters, your armor, everything. Lightsabers cut, John agreed. But they need time to swing. Need the wielder to see the threat. And they can't cut what they can't predict. She can predict, Kessler insisted. That's what force precognition does. She'll know where you're aiming before you pull the trigger. Maybe. John had faced opponents with seemingly supernatural advantages before. The High Table's best assassins had reflexes, enhanced by training and pharmaceuticals, combat precognition born from decades of experience. They'd been fast, aware, dangerous. John had killed them anyway. Precognition has limits, he said. It shows possibilities, not certainties. Overwhelm it with too many options. Move faster than decision-making processes can compensate. And prediction becomes paralysis. You're theorizing, Vree argued. You've never fought a force user. Never even seen one. You have no actual data on their capabilities. I have data on human limitations, John countered. Reaction speed, decision fatigue, psychological breaking points. Force powers don't make someone immune to stress, fear, or mistakes. They just raise the threshold. Thane was nodding slowly, his demolitions expertise giving him perspective. Overwhelming force applied to a single point. Doesn't matter how strong the material if you exceed its tolerance threshold. Exactly. John checked his equipment, both DL-44s, the E-11 Vibroblade, every remaining power pack and gas cartridge. The Inquisitor expects a fight, expects resistance she can dominate with superior abilities. I'm going to give her assassination instead. How? Mara demanded. She's surrounded by purge troopers in a fortified building under maximum security. The building has weakness, John said, pulling up the holographic schematic he'd memorized days ago. ISB headquarters was designed to resist external assault, not internal infiltration, and the Inquisitor will be focused on crime scene analysis, not perimeter security. She thinks her force abilities make her untouchable. They might, Kessa said quietly. Then I die, John replied with simple honesty. But at least I die fighting instead of running. And if I do manage to kill her, the Empire loses one of their most effective hunters. That's worth the risk. Daisy had woken during the discussion, sensing tension in his human's voice. The dog pressed against John's leg, warm and trusting. John knelt, scratching behind those soft ears. You stay here. Be good. I'll be back. The dog's tail wagged, believing absolutely. John wished he shared that certainty. I'm going alone, he told the team. No backup, no extraction support. If I'm killed or captured, burn this safe house and relocate. Don't attempt rescue. We've had this conversation, Mara said. And the answer is still no. You're a valuable asset. I'm a liability, John interrupted. The Empire is deploying Inquisitors because I'm forcing their hand. Every resource they commit to hunting me is a resource that could be killing actual rebellion operatives. My death might be more valuable than my survival. Spoken like someone who wants to die, Kessa observed. Spoken like someone who's made peace with it. John stood, checking weapons one final time. I lost everything that mattered years ago. Helen's gone. The only thing left is making sure Daisy is safe. If killing an Inquisitor helps accomplish that, then it's worth doing. The safe house was quiet. They understood, even if they disagreed. They'd all made similar calculations, weighing their lives against the cause, accepting that sometimes the best contribution was dying in ways that hurt the enemy. For hours, Vree said finally. That's how long before the Inquisitor finishes her investigation and begins actively hunting you. If you're going to strike, strike while she's stationary and focused elsewhere. John nodded. For hours to infiltrate ISB headquarters, navigate to wherever the Inquisitor was conducting her investigation, and kill someone who could supposedly sense danger before it manifested. Impossible odds. He'd faced worse. May the Force be with you, Mara said. It sounded almost like a prayer. I don't need the Force, John replied. I just need clear shots and 1 second of surprise. He left the safe house through maintenance tunnels, moving alone through Nar Shada's Underworld. Above him, the moon continued its perpetual cycle, commerce and crime, occupation and resistance, beings going about their lives while war raged in the shadows. The ISB headquarters loomed ahead, still scarred from John's previous infiltration. Security had been tripled, stormtroopers at every entrance, aerial patrols. Sensor coverage that should detect anything larger than a maintenance droid. Should being the operative word. John had infiltrated the Continental's New York headquarters during full lockdown. Had walked through Russian mob strongholds where every guard knew his face. Had entered places that should have been impossible to breach because he understood a fundamental truth. Security focuses outward, on obvious threats, external assault, conventional attack vectors. Security rarely expects the threat to walk through the front door with proper authorization. John approached a perimeter checkpoint, hands visible, posture non-threatening. The stormtroopers tensed, rifles rising. Identification, one demanded. John produced Captain Thrace's security pass card, taken from the dead ISB captain, now slightly modified with Vria's encryption hacks. Special courier for Inquisitor Third Sister. Urgent intelligence regarding the insurgent known as the Ghost. The stormtrooper scanned the pass card. It registered valid, clearance level appropriate for accessing secure areas. Proceed to sublevel 3. Report to security station before approaching the Inquisitor. That's simple. That easy. Because who would be insane enough to impersonate an Imperial courier while the Empire was hunting them across the moon? John Wick. That's who. He entered the building, moving with bureaucratic purpose through corridors still being repaired from his previous visit. ISB personnel barely glanced at him. Just another courier with proper credentials. Nothing remarkable. Sublevel 3 was heavily guarded now. 8 stormtroopers instead of 2, automated turrets active, blast doors that could seal the corridor in seconds. The Inquisitor's presence had justified maximum security. Courier for the Inquisitor, John announced at the security checkpoint. Intelligence packet, eyes-only clearance. The guard captain examined the passcard again, running multiple verification scans. For 3 seconds, John's fate balanced on whether Vria's encryption would hold. The scanner blinked green. Proceed. The Inquisitor is in Captain Thrace's former office, conducting investigation. You are authorized to approach, but not interrupt unless she acknowledges your presence. John walked past 8 stormtroopers, through security that should have been impenetrable, toward the woman who'd been sent to kill him. Sometimes audacity was the best tactic. Thrace's office had been preserved as a crime scene, blood still staining the desk, blast marks on walls, evidence of John's previous visit marked with holographic tags. The third sister stood in the center, eyes closed, one hand extended as if feeling invisible currents. I sense determination, she said without opening her eyes. Grief wrapped in rage, loss so profound it consumed everything else. Her eyes snapped open, fixing on John with unsettling intensity. The one who killed Captain Thrace was not a rebel, not an ideologue or freedom fighter, just a man with nothing left to lose. Accurate, John said. The third sister's hand dropped to her lightsaber. You're him, the ghost. She didn't sound alarmed, just interested. Walking directly into my presence with false credentials and probable suicide intentions. Fascinating psychology. Not suicide, John corrected. Execution. He drew both DL-44s and fired. The lightsaber ignited in a blur of red, the blade intercepting both blaster bolts with casual precision. The third sister moved, fluid, impossibly fast, closing the distance between them in 2 steps. John had anticipated this, expected the lightsaber's speed, the force-enhanced reflexes. He dropped the DL-44s, letting them clatter to the floor, and drew the vibroblade from his boot in the same motion. The third sister's lightsaber swept down to bisect him. John rolled forward, inside her reach, the vibroblade driving upward toward the gap between chest plate and helmet. She twisted, barely, just enough. The vibroblade scored across armor, monomolecular edge cutting deep but not deep enough. The third sister brought her knee up into John's chest, force-enhanced strength launching him backward into Thrace's desk. Air exploded from his lungs. Ribs cracked. The vibroblade flew from his grip. Impressive, the third sister said, examining the cut on her armor. Non-force-sensitive combatant who got within striking range. That's more than most Jedi accomplished before I killed them. John forced himself upright, ignoring the grinding pain in his chest. The E-11 was still maglocked to his back, but drawing it would take precious seconds. Seconds the Inquisitor wouldn't give him. You're not here to arrest me, John observed, buying time while his hand crept toward the rifle. Correct. You're a symbol now. Symbols are dangerous. They must be eliminated publicly to demonstrate that resistance ends in death. The lightsaber hummed, red blade casting everything in crimson. The Empire appreciates your efficiency. 8 stormtroopers, 2 at STS, a communication relay, an ISB captain. That's better than most rebel cells. I'm not rebel. I know. You're worse. You're personal. Rebels fight for ideology, which means they follow patterns, make predictable choices. But you fight for love, for grief, for primal motivations. That transcend strategy. The third sister approached slowly, confident. That makes you unpredictable, dangerous in ways the Empire doesn't handle well. Then you should let me go, John said. His hand closed around the E-11's grip. I should. She smiled, cold and professional. But the Empire doesn't make accommodation for competent threats. We eliminate them. She lunged. John drew the E-11 and fired on full automatic, hosing the space between them with plasma bolts at point-blank range. 30 shots in 3 seconds, volume of fire designed to overwhelm rather than aim. The lightsaber became a blur, intercepting bolts. But John was moving too, diving sideways, maintaining fire, not giving her a stationary target. Some shots got through. One grazed her leg. Another scored her shoulder plate. Not enough to stop her. The third sister gestured, and John felt invisible pressure seize him. The force, grabbing his body like a giant hand. He lifted off the ground. E-11 wrenched from his grip, arms pinned. Struggle is futile, she said, almost gently. You fought well, better than expected, but force abilities make conventional combat irrelevant. John's hand was still free, just barely, enough to reach the last weapon. The explosive charge Thane had given him for emergencies. Small, powerful, timer set for 3 seconds. John triggered it. No. The third sister released him, sensing danger, turning to flee. John hit the ground hard, rolling toward the shattered window from his previous escape. The charge detonated. The explosion consumed Thrace's office in fire and concussive force. The third sister was fast, force-enhanced. But physics didn't care about mystical powers. The blast caught her mid-leap, hurling her through the doorway into the corridor where stormtroopers were responding to blaster fire. John was already out the window, falling 15 meters for the second time in 3 days. He hit the street, shield generator absorbing most of the impact but shattering from the strain. Pain shot through his already cracked ribs. He ran anyway. Behind him, the ISB headquarters was chaos. Fire alarms, emergency protocols, stormtroopers flooding toward the explosion, trying to secure the Inquisitor, searching for the ghost. Wick, Mara's voice in his earpiece, urgent. What happened? Third sister engaged. Status unknown. Extraction point Charlie now. He staggered through streets, each breath agony from cracked ribs, vision blurring from pain and exhaustion. The speeder appeared, Mara driving. Thane providing cover fire for pursuit that hadn't materialized yet. Did you kill her? Thane asked as John collapsed onto the speeder. Don't know. Explosion hit her directly. Force powers might have protected her. John coughed, tasting blood. Either way, I hurt her. Proved she's not invincible. They raced back to the safe house through routes designed to frustrate pursuit. Behind them, the Empire was mobilizing, trying to understand how a non-force sensitive had engaged in Inquisitor and survived. At the safe house, Vri had news. Imperial communications are confused. The third sister is alive but injured. First-degree burns, possible concussion. She's demanding increased resources, claiming you're more dangerous than initial assessments indicated. John allowed himself to be lowered onto a medical pallet, the team gathering around him. Kessa applied Bacta to burns and cuts. Thane stabilized his ribs with emergency field medicine. Mara monitored Imperial frequencies, calculating next moves. And Daisy was there, pressing against John's side, tail wagging, just happy his human had returned. You did it, Mara said quietly. You fought an Inquisitor and survived. That's unprecedented. Didn't kill her, John muttered through pain-gritted teeth. You didn't have to. You proved she could be hurt. That force powers don't make someone untouchable. Mara pulled up holographic displays showing civilian networks. The story is already spreading. The ghost fought the Inquisitor and escaped. Another Imperial asset wounded, another myth reinforced. John wanted to care about symbolism, about inspiration and resistance narratives. But his body was shutting down, exhaustion and injury demanding rest he couldn't afford. How long until the third sister recovers? He asked. 6 hours, Vri estimated. Maybe less if they have advanced medical technology. Then she'll come for you again, angrier and more cautious. Good, John said, closing his eyes. Let her come. I'll be ready. But he wouldn't be. Not really. The third sister was beyond anything John had faced before. Faster, stronger, enhanced by powers he didn't understand and couldn't counter conventionally. Next time, she'd be prepared for his tactics. Next time, he'd need more than audacity and explosives. Next time would probably kill him. But before that happened, John Wick would make the Empire pay for every stormtrooper they'd sent, every checkpoint they'd established, every detention order they'd signed. He'd make them pay for threatening his dog. For that, no price was too high, not even his life. The ghost of Nar Shadaa became legend in the weeks that followed. The man who'd fought the Empire for a dog, who'd killed an ISB captain and wounded an Inquisitor, who'd proven that even overwhelming power could bleed. John Wick never stopped fighting. Every day brought new targets, Imperial checkpoints, communication relays, officers who signed detention orders. The Empire poured resources into hunting him, pulled forces from other sectors, transformed occupation into obsession. Daisy remained safe in rebellion safe houses, protected by operatives who'd come to understand what the small beagle represented. Not just a pet, but the reason one man had declared war on tyranny itself. Some nights, John would return from operations and sit with Daisy, running his hand along soft fur, remembering Helen's smile and the life they'd built. The darkness had returned, but this time John wielded it with purpose. The Empire eventually killed him, or so their reports claimed. But civilians whispered different stories. The ghost never died, they said. He just moved on to another moon, another sector, wherever tyranny needed to learn that actions have consequences. And somewhere in the galaxy, a man and his dog continued proving that one person, fighting for love, could change everything.